Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. And let's see. Can everybody see my screen okay? Somebody just confirm for me, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group meeting for March of 2022. This is our agenda for today. We'll have our welcome and general business, which is what we'll start right now. And then we'll hear from our meeting sponsor, Seligo. And then our main presentation after that will be a potpourri of NetSuite topics, and I'll highlight what those topics are here in the next slide. Then we'll also have a 22.1 update highlights, NetSuite, the new release that's coming here real soon. And then we'll have our open forum after that for approximately half an hour or so. And at that point, you can ask any questions or challenges that you're having, and as a group, we can help answer each other's questions or problems. So here's our potpourri of topics, where first of all, we'll talk about SweetQL. We'll hear from Dietrich, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Tim. And then we'll hear about bank recs and feeds from Larson. Then Mike Kachline will present on invoice grouping. And then I will tell you about the payment link functionality. And then from Margie Cominos, we'll hear about matching bills to receipts and POs. So membership to the user group. Membership is free. You can register at rmnsug.org. Once you register, it ensures that you get a notification of upcoming meetings and events. We also, once you are a member, we have a LinkedIn forum, and you get access to the LinkedIn forum. And then as a member, also, CPE credits are available for our meetings. You'll get 2 credits today. If you are not a member, please sign up, especially if you are intending to sign up for the CPE credits. We will talk about CPE credits here in a moment. We will not post the check-in keywords until the start of the main presentation. Let me advance this. So our LinkedIn user group forum, the purpose is to support fellow members with questions and answers. If there's any follow-up questions and answers from meetings, we also use that to post announcements when our presentations are available, the presentations and notes, and then discounts to SweetWorld. We do get a discount usually from NetSuite for SweetWorld, but it is the same as the early bird sign up, but it's kind of an extra benefit for us. And then also on the LinkedIn forum, you are able to post job openings, or if you're looking for a job or that type of thing. So where to find us? Our website is rmnsug.org. We also have a YouTube channel, and our YouTube channel is where we post all of our videos. And then we also post those on our website. And I'm going to show you our website real quick, just to highlight where you can see all of our past meeting recordings. And then this is the URL for our LinkedIn forum. You can also just go to LinkedIn and search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group, and you'll see our forum there. I'm going to switch my screen share here, and we'll go to screen 2. Okay, so this is our website. Basically, this is our first upcoming meeting. So this is all of the information. You can RSVP for the meeting. You've probably all already done that since you're here at the meeting. But this section right here under posts, this is where we put all of our past presentations. And so this is our most recent one, Suite Analytics presentation from January. We also have our archive over here of all of our past presentations. And then if you want to search for a specific topic, we've probably talked about it at some point. And so let's say we want to do saved searches. So here's creating sublists with saved searches. Here's saved searches A to Z, tips and tricks, advanced. So obviously we've done a lot on saved searches. But I just wanted to highlight that that's where you can find all of our past presentations. They will be up there forever. It is free for anybody to look at any point in time. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get notifications when we post new videos up there as well. All right, let me go back. Okay, we will move on. So member announcements, will take a moment for anybody that wants to make an announcement. You can either post it in the chat window here and I can announce it, or I can announce it later, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, I'll pause for a minute or two here if anybody would like to make an announcement. Announcements would be you're looking for a new position, you're looking to hire for a new position within your company, or anything like that. So I'll just pause for a moment and let anybody unmute themselves to make an announcement. Or if you're feeling shy, again, you can post it in the chat window. Any announcements?
I think someone did post something in the...
Looking for an ERP manager at rbw.com. Thanks for posting that, Theo. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Any more announcements? Going once? Going twice? If you think of it later and you want to post it in the chat window, I will bring it back up later on and announce that. Okay, we'll move on. So I'd like to do a quick introduction of the board. I think it's important that you get to see our faces. So that's me in the upper left. I'm the president, Corey Anderson. I'm an independent NetSuite and Seligo consultant. We have Margie Cominos of the PlantScan Corp. She is our sponsorship and member chair. We have Mike Kachline from Vertifor. He is our communications chair. We have Peggy Ebleth from RSM. She is our speaker chair. And then Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting, also an independent consultant. She is our treasurer. So I'd like to thank the board for all of the work that you do behind the scenes to make these meetings happen and help the user group to continue to run. We've been running for, I don't know, Margie, how many years now? Is it 10 years yet? Or is it 10 years this November? I can't remember. Or is it more?
In September, it was September 2008. So you do the math.
Oh, okay. All right. So more than that. Okay. So anyway, we are the oldest and largest NetSuite user group in the country. We were the first user group, and Margie was one of the founding members of the user group, and she continues to help support the board as we go forward. So thank you all very much. I'd also like to announce right now that we have decided as a board that we will not resume in-person meetings in the future. We will continue a fully remote user group at this point. We think there's a lot of benefits to this. One of the main things that we really enjoyed about the in-person meetings was the networking possibilities and meeting people and seeing people that we haven't seen in a long time. And so we are planning to do at some point in the future something like a happy hour, like a get together somewhere here in the Denver metro area. But all of the meetings in the future will be fully remote moving forward. And one of the biggest advantages that we've seen from this is that it allows us to find presenters from anywhere. We can have presenters from any country or any state, obviously, and it just opens up the options for presentations a lot broader. So anyway, thank you to the board. Meeting evaluations, we do send out a survey. It'll be sent out today. Please take a few minutes to let us know how we're doing. We do read and act on the feedback from those evaluations. One of the most important things for us is future topic ideas. We do have an ongoing list. We basically have a 2-year cycle of meeting topics. For example, we do workflows once every other year. We do save searches and reporting and analytics. Actually, that one we do every year, but we do a back to basics every other year, that type of thing. But we do have a couple of slots on our calendar where they're open to new topics. And so like this meeting here, this is a potpourri meeting. So we don't have a specific set topics that we do for this meeting, But so we take those ideas from the evaluations and put them into an ongoing list of topic ideas. So please take a few minutes to fill out those surveys. We do appreciate that feedback for sure. As a reminder, please use the same email to RSVP to the meetings as the email that you received the meeting invite. We try to maintain individual member records. I used to post how many members that we have, and then I realized we have a lot of duplicate records, and so that number is not really accurate anymore. So if you received an invite to the meeting with different email addresses, so if you received more than one invite to this meeting, please email rsvp@rmnsug.org to have the extra email addresses inactivated. Provide the correct company name, which email should be inactivated if that's the case too. Just take a minute to do a quick reply. We would appreciate that. Meeting sponsorship. So membership to the RMNSUG is free. The cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have Suite App and consulting sponsors. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com and be integrated tightly with NetSuite. Consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. You can sign up or learn more information for either member or sponsorship type at rmnsug.org/sponsorship. Here are our upcoming meetings. So May of this year, we will have Workflow, also known as SweetQL. That will be presented by, I believe, Alex from RSM. He did it 2 years ago, and it was a fantastic presentation. So I think we have him lined up to do that one again. And then in July, we'll have our Back to Basics meeting, which is, you can think of it as NetSuite 101, NetSuite for beginners, that type of thing. And that, I believe, will be presented by Dana Larson of our board. And then September of this year is our customizations meeting, and that one will be presented by me. And we did that one, it will have been 2 years in September, so coming back around to our normal schedule. And then in November is, we don't have a specific topic slated yet, so that is to be determined. And again, that's where we take the feedback and meeting topic ideas from our ongoing feedback from you, and that list, and we decide what topics we want to put into these TBD slots. CPE credits. So you do get 2 CPE credits for today's meeting. Certificates will be issued within 15 days after training. For problems with the CPE certificates, you can email info@rmnsug.org. And CPE credits are sponsored by and will continue to be sponsored by iBailey. This is a compliance slide that we need to read. So CPE and attendance credits. To receive CPE credit for attending today's session, you must sign in and out of the session using code words. The facilitator, me, will provide the first code word at the start of the session and then provide you a checkout code word once the session is complete. Those code words will be given at the beginning of the main presentation and the end of the main presentation. So when at the beginning of Tim's presentation, we'll have that first code word. And then I think Margie will do the last presentation for today, and we'll give the checkout code word at that point. So you log in with your computer, click the link that was provided to you in the email, fill out the information, and enter the check-in and check-out keywords. I will post the link in the chat window here to the login or the check-in link once I post the first check-in keyword. So I would like to take a moment to thank our consulting sponsor today. Our consulting sponsor is Morgan Franklin Consulting, and I will read just a quick, some information about Morgan Franklin. Hang on one second, get to this slide, okay? So Morgan Franklin, Vaco's global consulting arm, is a management and technology consulting firm that works with leading organizations to address critical finance, technology, and business objectives. We implement leading ERP, CPM, and other business technology solutions and full lifecycle support. Through our multi-lens approach, we help organizations quickly and cost-effectively address numerous value-creating opportunities while tackling the challenges that come with implementing and optimizing their enterprise application investment. Together, Morgan Franklin and Vaco deliver consulting services and global talent solutions to more than 3,500 clients around the world. So here's some information about Morgan Franklin Consulting. Thank you again, Morgan Franklin, for being our consulting sponsor. And also thank you to our Suite App sponsor. Our Suite App sponsor today is Seligo, and we are just a few minutes ahead of schedule. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to Karin Stella, and I will stop my sharing, Karin, and you can bring up your screen. So hold on just a moment. And then Karin, do we have Justine on?
We do, yes.
Perfect. All right. All right, Karin, you should be able, I'm sorry, Karen, you should be able to go ahead and share.
All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
We can.
Just perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm Karen Stell. I'm the account executive here at Seligo. I'll be covering the core portion of Seligo, and then I'm going to later pass it on to Justine that will be covering our Cloud Extend division of Seligo. So welcome everybody to the NetSuite user group. I'm guessing most of you have probably heard about Seligo, especially if you've been working in the NetSuite ecosystem for some time. I know probably a lot of you guys are already customers or partners at this point. But if you're not familiar with Seligo, really what's important to understand about Seligo is an iPaaS, so an integration platform as a service, which allows you to quickly integrate applications and then automate business processes across any application. This is particularly important in the NetSuite ecosystem if you're keeping NetSuite as your system of record or master source of data for financials or customer information, product information, inventory. Everything gets built around NetSuite, so it's important to have that information flowing seamlessly from one place to the next, and we can do so with thousands of different applications. Seligo is by far the largest NetSuite integration partner to date. So we have over 5,000 NetSuite customers in every single vertical you can imagine. Part of what makes us special is that we're not only vertically agnostic, but we also have a lot of pre-built connectors, best-in-class integrations for popular different ecosystems inside of NetSuite, such as Salesforce, Jira, ADP, Zendesk, Shopify, Amazon, PayPal, Stripe, and many, many more. Those are just some of our really popular ones. And then also we support customized projects. So we have the most advanced NetSuite connectors that has several functionalities that no other connector has. And on top of that, as mentioned, we support customization. We're very familiar with every single use case in the integration automation. Really, we are a complete platform. So what can we do? You can connect any point-to-point application, such as NetSuite to Salesforce or NetSuite to Shopify, but you can also automate and optimize business processes end-to-end. So we're talking not just point-to-point connectors, but the whole order-to-cash process, employee onboarding and offboarding, payout to reconciliation, which we have to several different payment gateways, and more. Ultimately, customers use us to accelerate their digital transformation efforts across entire organizations. We have connected thousands of different endpoints. Many of them we do have pre-built connectors for already. We are endpoint agnostic. So really, if there's not a pre-built connector, customization is not a scary word for us. We have universal connectors that allows us to connect not only to APIs, but also really any method of communication. It can be FTP, SQL, EDI, webhooks, HTTP, so on. As long as there's some method of communication there with the applications, then we can integrate. And the nice thing too is that our platform was built both for IT users as well as business users. So as powerful as the platform is, you really don't have to be a developer to manage the integration. So Seligo is not just connecting applications, but we're also automating business processes. For example, if you're in supply chain logistics, then you'll likely have several of these use cases that you see here along the top line. You might be doing retail analytics and data warehousing, and so you might need some EDI or 3PL management, and obviously you would need to do so in a scalable way. If you're in the software service industries, then you'll likely run into the use cases you see here along the bottom line that you need to automate across the NetSuite, especially if you're keeping NetSuite as your system of record. And your typical landscape for a NetSuite company, you can see here, Seligo, you keep NetSuite in the center there, and then Seligo would automate all those different applications and all the different departments of your company, keeping that data integrity and without having to worry about any data silos. Here's just one quick example of our pre-built connector. This is a NetSuite to Salesforce connector. It's extremely popular, but we have many more of these pre-built connectors. Amazon and Shopify as well are really popular, but you can certainly go to the Seligo marketplace and see a lot of the ones that we have in place. All of them have advanced functionalities that are only found in Seligo. And lastly, on my end, some of you may know that we have launched Seligo University. So this is a place customers and partners can go and get a free course and get Seligo certifications, as well as free NetSuite integration courses. So if you just go to seligo.com/university, you can get a free account, you can get certifications, or you can just learn more about the NetSuite integrations, and then it's all for free as well. And that's it on my end. Thank you everyone for your time. And I will go ahead and pass it on to Justine, who'll be covering Cloud Extend.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Karen, you can just keep your slides up. I'll just let you know when to flip through if that's okay with you. So if you can head over to the next slide there. Awesome. So thank you everyone so much for having me. I'm Justine from the Cloud Extend team at Seligo. For those of you that may not have heard of this Cloud Extend brand before, we're a division that really focuses on what we call productivity applications that really help our customers save a ton of time day in and day out. So we actually have 4 NetSuite-centric applications. Karen, if you can head over to the next slide, please. To start off, we have these email applications. So we have 2 apps, one called Cloud Extend Google Workspace for NetSuite and the other Cloud Extend Outlook for NetSuite. And these are applications that integrate your email, calendar, and either Google Drive or OneDrive and SharePoint with NetSuite. Why do customers use these applications? Really because all day long you're working in Gmail or Outlook and you're talking to your customers, prospects, leads, whoever that might be. And that's great, but no one has access to your inbox but you. And then of course we have NetSuite, which is really your source of truth and information. My manager always says to us, if it isn't in NetSuite, it didn't happen. And this is where Cloud Extend can really help bridge that gap. We make it really easy to get all those important conversations, files, events, etc., into NetSuite for really that 360-degree critical visibility. So everyone in your company is on the same page. So if you use Outlook, you use Gmail, and you're using the NetSuite CRM, this is definitely a great combination. Karen, if you can head over to the next slide, please. Awesome. Lastly, we have 2 Excel-based applications. The first is what we call Cloud Extend Excel Data Management. And this app really allows you to create, edit, update, and delete NetSuite records directly in Excel very quickly, saving a ton of time. You can basically bypass the native UI, bypass the CSV process, and do it all in Excel very quickly. With Cloud Extend, we actually validate your data in Excel prior to uploading, so you can really end that vicious cycle of waiting for like CSV uploads to run, hoping for the best. Finance teams, sales teams, NetSuite admins, operations teams, they all love this application just because it really saves a lot of time. Now, we actually released a new application for Excel about, I want to say 8 months or so ago. This is really exciting. This application is also Excel-based, but works in an entirely different way. This is our Cloud Extend Analytics for NetSuite application. And what this application does is it allows you to pull your NetSuite saved searches out of NetSuite into Excel, either on demand with the click of a button or on a schedule as often as every hour. you can then use that data from NetSuite in Excel for reporting purposes. Maybe you have a sales dashboard that you want to quickly update. Maybe you have some pivot tables that you want refreshed, or maybe you have something that you want to present to a board and you want to make it look a certain way. Our app, we like to call it like the engine. It gets those saved searches out really quickly, and then you can use the power of Excel to build whatever you like from there directly in Excel itself. So looking for any type of Excel applications, definitely reach out. These apps are really awesome. And the cool thing about these applications is they're plug and play. They take no time to set up, 20 minutes, and you're off and running. So thank you guys so much for your time today. Karen, if you can go to the next slide, I believe we have a raffle. So yeah, guys, if you go ahead and enter this website in, you can go ahead and enter into a raffle for a $50 gift card. So encourage everybody to do that. And Karen just posted that into the chat window. So thank you guys very much. And thank you to the user group. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you so much, Justine and Karen. We really appreciate your sponsorship. Real quick, I'm going to post the CPE check-in code, and then we'll start our main presentation. And we'll start with Tim about SweetQL. But before we do that, I also wanted to mention that Morgan Franklin Consulting also has a raffle today. Lane posted the URL for the raffle in the chat window. So please make sure you go and sign up for the raffle there. They are giving away two $200 Amazon gift cards. So thank you for doing that, Morgan Franklin. And then also thank you, Seligo. Let me share my screen again. All right, so here's our check-in keyword. And I will also post in the chat window the URL for check-in. So here's your CPE check-in URL. And then also there's your check-in code. I'm going to leave that up for a minute. Please don't post the check-in and check-out keywords in the chat window. It is against the rules. Leave that up for just a moment. Okay, so the check-in code word is Irish. Make sure there is a link in the chat window where you click on the link, you go to the website, and you post the check-in code word on that website. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pass it over to Tim. So hang on just a moment. And Tim, you can take it away when you're ready.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let me try to get my screen share. All right, can you guys see that?
We can.
Okay, great. So I won't bore you with a whole bunch of slides. I've got 11 here, but most of them are just fluff. So try to go quickly through the slides and get to a demo. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Tim Dietrich. I am a software developer that specializes in NetSuite. I'm independent. I work on contracts, so I'm not with any of the larger firms. I'm based out of Richmond, Virginia, and I'm the developer of the SuiteQL Query Tool, which is what we're going to talk about in just a moment. And if you want to learn more about me, there's my website, the URL right there. So my goals in this presentation are to introduce you to SweetQL, demonstrate the tool that I developed, which helps you use SweetQL, show a whole bunch of example queries along the way, and then if we've got time at the end, I'll take some questions and answers. So first, what is SweetQL? SweetQL is a query language. It's basically a programming language that you use to get data out of a database. And SweetQL is basically NetSuite's version of SQL, which is a query language that's been around for a long time. And again, you use SweetQL to access data in a NetSuite account. So as you'll see in a few minutes, I'll write a few queries, and you see just how easy it is to get data out of NetSuite. It can be used with some other NetSuite functionality, including Suite Analytics Connect, Suite Talk REST, and Suite Script, if you're familiar with any of those. If not, don't worry. But that's essentially what NetSuite developed SweetQL for. And so you might be wondering, like, what are the benefits of SweetQL? You know, you've got your searches, you've been using those for years, so what's the big deal? And I think as you'll see as I go through some of the queries, the big deal is that SweetQL gives us just a lot more functionality, a lot more than I think we're used to. We're able to get data out of the database very, very quickly. It's easier to get to data that I think has traditionally been difficult to get to from things like saved searches or reports. You can, drill in and out, basically join data in ways that I think are difficult with other functions in NetSuite. If you are a developer or have ever used SQL in the past, then I think this is going to feel like something familiar, like getting back on a bike. It's just really nice being able to query NetSuite and get the data that you want. I think as a developer, not being able to do that has been frustrating in the past. And now that we can do it, it's pretty amazing. It's also very concise. And so again, when I show you the queries, I think, you'll see just how they make sense. I think they're very logical. And if you're a developer that has had to deal with using saved searches in your applications, I think you'll find that using SweetQL in your applications might be just an easier way to get the same thing done. And I think that your code is a lot cleaner. So we'll see. Again, you can use SweetQL in scripts. And with the tool that I developed, you can use it to basically do ad hoc reporting, or if you're trying to get to the bottom of something that's driving you nuts, and you're having a hard time figuring out like what transaction is causing your problem, then understanding how SweetQL works and using the query tool might be a good way for you to solve those types of problems. So I guess what I'm getting at right there is that you don't have to be a developer necessarily to really understand or be able to take advantage of SweetQL. Okay, so the SweetQL Query Tool, I've mentioned that a few times. It's basically a NetSuite application that I developed, and I did it really out of necessity. I started to explore SweetQL and realized that it was frustrating because I wanted to be able to very quickly write a query and change it and continue to tweak it until I got it just right. And there just wasn't any way to do it at the time. I think there are other SweetQL tools that are out there now. What makes mine different, I think, is that it is completely free. So there's no cost to it. There's no catch. And again, with this application, you can actually create and run queries right within NetSuite. So and I'm going to show that to you right now. So bear with me. I'm going to change screens here. All right. I'm going to go into the query tool. I have it installed. This is a test drive account. So all the data that you're seeing, today is fake. But I've already got the tool installed and I've created a shortcut for it. So for me, I can get to it just by clicking this link. Maybe. There it goes. All right. And this is the tool itself. So the way that it works is you write your query over here in this box, and then you just run the query. And as you'll see in a second, I'm going to have the results show up down in the bottom. Jump between screens here and copy over a query. So this is a really, really basic query. Basically, I'm saying that I want to get all the data that I possibly can from the employee table. So when I run the query, I scroll down, you can see there's all my data. Pretty ugly, it's no real logic to the order of the columns. If I start scrolling over, you can see that there's a lot of data here. But it basically brought back 175 data on 175 employees that are in this NetSuite account. And you get a sense of just how quick that was. So what I'm going to do now is actually change the query just a little bit so that I'm going to narrow down what data comes back. And rather than type it, I'm just going to paste in the updated query. And so when I run it, this time you'll see that it's only brought back the columns that I'm asking for: the last name, the first name, the email address, and the phone number. So still getting back 175 rows of data, or data on 175 employees, depending on how you want to word it. But I'm just bringing back a lot less of the information about each employee. I'm going to continue to tweak that query just a little bit, show you how you can also filter on what employees are actually being returned. So in this particular case, I'm asking for the same data in terms of the last name, first name, email, and phone number. Still asking for the data to come from the employee table. But now what I'm doing is saying that I only want the employees whose email address looks like test.com. So when I run the query, notice that now I'm only getting back 121 employees. And if you kind of scroll up and down, you can see that all of these email, or all of the employees have a test.com email address. So basically what I'm doing is just showing you how you can create SQL statements here and then run the query and see the results. And if you're already familiar with SQL, you're probably bored out of your mind. But if you've never seen it before, hopefully you can see just how easy this really is. That's not to say that every query is easy. They get more complicated depending on what you want to do. But let's suppose that now my next request is, this is great, but they're not in any particular order. The employees are just probably being returned in the order that they were created. And so if I change the query just a little bit and basically tell NetSuite, this time I want the employees returned and sorted by last name and first name. If I run the query, you'll see that sorry about that. If I run that query again, now you'll see that they are in the correct order, basically alphabetical by last name. And so if two people have the same last name, it then subsorts by their first name. Right. So the other thing I want to
don't know if you're seeing the chat, but there is a question on how to get it. So you'll probably get into that, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'll cover all the questions at the end, or do my best to if we have time. Okay. All right. So I've shown you a couple of queries so far, but haven't really talked too much about the tool. There's a whole bunch of options over here on the right that I'm going to talk about now. So far, all the queries that I've run, I've had the results come back and they're displayed as just a table. So let's suppose that I actually want to do maybe a little bit more with that data. Like I want to be able to search within the results or sort on the fly. I can change the format of the results and go from using a table to using something called a data table. And when I do that, notice the table changed a little bit in terms of its appearance. And now I'm only showing 10 records at a time. But I could change that over here, show up to 100 at a time. Not sure why there's such a lag. But I can also now adjust the sorting on the fly. Let's suppose I wanted to sort these records by the email address. I can just click right over here to do that. I can also search for people by name, and notice that it narrows down within the results itself. It narrows them down even further to look for the keywords that I'm typing in the search box. So there's a lot of nice functionality that you get by looking at the data as a data table. The other thing you can do is indicate that you want to see the results as, say, in a CSV format. So this is a comma separated file at this point, or the data is comma separated. And what you can do is just copy that if you want, and then you can take it into something like Excel or a Google Sheet and paste it in there. But basically, it's a way for you to get the data out of the tool and into something else. It's not super convenient, because it depends on what it is you're trying to do. Like, for example, if you want to use the query and generate a CSV file, maybe on a schedule, then what you could do is take the query that you've developed and work with the developer to put that into a script, and then actually have the data be generated. Maybe it's every night, with a file being saved to the file cabinet, that sort of thing. So that's the CSV option. And then for the developers that are on the call, you can also choose to look at the data as JSON, which can be pretty helpful. This is just basically another way of encoding the data, and a pretty popular format that we use. So you can see as I'm scrolling down that it's, all the data is just essentially somewhat similar to comma separated, but it's structured in a way that developers can actually use this data in their applications. So there's that. There are two other options here that I want to talk about just very quickly. And give me a second, I'm going to copy yet another query. It might be the same one, but let's see. So change the query just a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is indicate that I want to actually use the data that came back, this 175 employees. Maybe I want to generate a PDF out of that data. So what you can do is click on the PDF option here, and then it exposes this template editor. And this is going to get just a little bit technical, but not too much. For those of you that are familiar with NetSuite's advanced PDFs, this will look somewhat familiar to you, I think. I'm going to paste in a template. Very similar to HTML if you've done any web development work. But basically now what I'm going to do is take the data that came back from the query. I'm going to apply the data to the template that I just pasted in the window and generate a PDF document. So when I click the Generate Document button, of course I can't see it. Hold on for a second. Never fails that the Zoom toolbar is always in the way. But anyway, you can see that it has actually generated a PDF document. So it took the data that I got back from the query, the data that's down here, and basically think of it as a mail merge, if you're familiar with that at all from maybe days using Word or something like that. But it's taken the results of the query and applying it to the template and generating the PDF document as a result. So there's that. And then one last thing I want to show you, one other option is that in addition to being able to generate PDFs, we can also generate HTML documents. This is just kind of interesting, but what you can do is I'm going to jump back to the tool, scroll up, and indicate that I want an HTML document this time. And I'm going to update the template. I'm going to generate the document. And notice this time it also generated a different document type. It's an HTML file. Looks very similar to the PDF, except that it is interactive. I can actually click on the email addresses and so on. I could actually take the HTML that was generated and maybe put it in a content management system, publish it on a website or an intranet. But it's just another way of using the data in the tool and doing something with it. On my website, on my blog, I have examples of where I'm using the data and using a template to generate charts and graphs and things like that. So if you need to do something like that very quickly, you could come in here, write your query, and then use this function to generate like a nice looking chart, for example, or a graph. And before I forget, there's a couple other things I want to show you. I'm going to go back to viewing this as a table. And let me grab my original query real quick, one of them. So just a couple other things about the way the tool works. This time I changed the query just a little bit. And notice that on the employees where we don't have a phone number, I know it's real light and you might not be able to see it, but in the cell it says null. And basically that's the database's way of saying to you, there is no phone number for this particular employee. And so just some other nice things about the tool. Right now, the word null is just dimmed. But what you can do is completely hide the word null if you want, or actually display it so that it looks like all the other text. So if you're wondering what that little block of options was, that's what that does. And then just a couple other interesting features of the tool. One of the very first questions that people ask me, and I'm almost guaranteed when I look at the chat, one of the questions will be, this is all great, but how do you know what table to query against and what columns are in the table? Well, there's a tool built right into the query tool called the tables reference. And when I click it, it opens up in a new tab and I can actually start to search here, for a table. I can even kind of guess, like for example, if I'm looking for, I don't know, tax information, I can type the keyword tax and see all the tables that reference that. Sales tax items, tax item, tax groups, stuff like that. I'm going to pull up employee. And you can see now it's changed the list a little bit. If I click on the table, then over on the right-hand side, it's going to show me a lot of information about the table. It takes a second because employees, the employee table links to a lot of other tables in NetSuite. But you can see in the employee table itself, there's 58 columns, and you can actually search for those. So if you're looking for a first name, and basically what this is showing you is that in the database, in the employee table, there is the column called first name. Even tells you that it's a string, which basically means it's could consist of letters and numbers, anything really. So this tool can be pretty helpful as far as you getting your query built. It also shows the joins that this particular table or the other tables that this table joins to or references. So there's 306 tables that the employee table connects to in some way, shape, or form. And then if I scroll down a little bit further, I've even given you like a way to very quickly create a query based on that particular table. So you could take this and then paste it in the tool and clean it up and customize it if you want. So that's the tables reference. And then jumping back to the tool, one of the other really nice features about it is that I've provided a remote library, a shared library of queries that I think might be helpful to a lot of people. So for example, I can come in here and there's 49 in the library right now. Let's suppose I also wanted to look for something. I guess I don't have any tax one. Let's look for sales related queries. As I start to type in the search box, you can see it narrows down and shows me queries that are in the library that meet the criteria, the search criteria. And I can actually load it right into the tool and then run the query. So this is basically a query that's showing me all the sales orders and the total number and amount of the different statuses that those sales orders are in. So if you're looking for a particular query or just to kind of get started with some kind of a query, the remote library might be pretty helpful to you. And I'm not going to go into this too much right now, but the tool also lets you save your own queries to your file cabinet if you'd like. You can load them from file cabinet or save them there. And so that can be a really good way for you to save the work you've done and even to potentially collaborate with other people in your NetSuite account. They could write a query or you could write one and then you can say, hey, go in and run this query. I think this is what you need, that sort of thing. All right, well, it was a lot.
I think I can distill a few questions for you, Tim, because there's a lot of chat going on and I think Mike's been answering a lot of them, but one of them was, is the name or label used for search?
Okay, let me go back and show you. So if I go back into the table reference and I'll pull up employee again. So when it brings it up, the label is really the friendly way of thinking of what the column is, but it's the name that you want to use in your query.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you pass parameters to a query like date ranges that a non-technical user could input and run?
The tool doesn't provide a way for you to do that, but as a developer, you can use query parameters in your scripts and things like that.
Okay. And is the table reference the same thing as the records browser in NetSuite?
Yes, it is. And I was actually going to bring that up. So the way that the tables reference works is it uses the same API that the records browser uses. What it is doing, though, is basically presenting the data, I think, in an easier to use way. It's easier to find what you're looking for. It's not as sort of technical as, you know, the records browser is. So yeah, it's the same data, but just repackaged essentially.
Yeah, and Tim, I just want to add on to that because there's the records browser, which is the old NetSuite, you know, SweetScript records browser, but there's also the newer record catalog down under the setup. So I'm glad you mentioned, that's really what I meant. Yeah, it's here, the records catalog, that is the data that my tool is also referencing, not the records browser. I misspoke, sorry. And Tim, could you cover briefly, because we did have a question, I answered it, but enabling that save and load to a local file cabinet for, you know, somebody who just downloads the tool initially, I think at least what I found is you have to edit the script and like right up top, you just put a file cabinet internal ID. Is that the way to do that, or is there an easier way?
Yeah, right now that's the best way to do it. So and to enable the feature that you saw me use where I'm able to basically save and load queries from the file cabinet, the first thing you should do is probably go to the file cabinet and create a new folder. Unless you've already got a folder that you want to put these things in. If you go into the file cabinet, you will see that there's an integer, a number that's assigned to every folder. And what you do is you take that number and you can go into the script itself once you've installed it. And right up at the top of the script, there is a variable. And you can actually just say, okay, this is the folder that I want you to use. If you don't put a number in there, if you don't set this up, then the tool will work, but basically it knows that you're not able to save or load local queries. And I don't want to get too technical and show you how to do everything that I just described, but if you need help with that, just email me and I'll shoot you back a quick email and basically be more detailed. Last thing I want to do is show you scripts right now.
And I think Mike posted help documentation somewhere in the chat there, right? Yeah,
I posted a link to Tim's site, so that's where you can find the tool.
Excellent.
Yeah. So just a couple other things real quick. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, can you use SweetQL to update the data in NetSuite? Especially, I usually get that from developers who are used to being able to do that in other platforms, other database systems. And no, you can't. SweetQL is read-only. What you see in the tool when you're querying and all that good stuff is based on the role that you're logged into NetSuite as. So for the demo, I was logged in as an administrator. I have access to everything. Had I been logged in as, say, a sales manager or something like that, I could write queries all day long, but the data that I have access to in the queries is going to be limited by that particular role. So for example, they might not be able to see employee data, payroll information, that sort of thing. I didn't really show any examples of this, but you can join to as many tables as you want. So again, if you're good with SQL and you know how to do joins, this is one of the really awesome things about SweetQL. And then just one last little note there that there are some tables that we still don't have access to through SweetQL. Every once in a while I get a question or I'll run into something myself where the data that you want, you just can't get to. And I think it's for security reasons. I think NetSuite's still trying to figure out how to expose some of the data to us, but that's just a hunch. So I mentioned that I would show you how or tell you how to get to the tool. It is available for free. It's under an MIT license. You have to download the script and install it. Sounds scarier than it is, but if you need instructions on how to do that, let me know. And you can download the script directly from my website. Do we still have time for more Q&A or should I wrap up?
Yeah, we have a few minutes for Q&A.
Okay. Was there anything in the chat that you guys want me to look at it specifically, or?
I do have a quick question for you, Tim. So when you get results like when you do a query for employee records and you get a multiple results, where like in a saved search, you get multiple rows. If we're looking at like, we do a query on the employee's role or the roles that are assigned to them, how is that displayed in the results? Is it multiple rows per record, or does it kind of put it all into one field?
Well, it really depends on how you've written the query. But yeah, I think generally the answer is that you're going to see multiple rows. I mean, if you think about it, what you're asking for there is all the different rows, right? All the possible combinations. So like using your example, if I did write a query real quick to show each employee and the role that they have, if they have multiple roles, they'll be listed multiple times. There may even be in the remote library. Wait a second. Yeah, here's one. Got lucky there. But you can see, some of these people have a large number of roles. What this one is doing, even though you see like the same employee listed multiple times with the same role, it's because I'm also saying, show me what they can do. What's the permission that they have and what's the level of that permission? So that query was in the remote library. So if you guys want to play around with it, you can load it yourself. And also, I didn't mention this, but whenever I can, if the query that's in the library is based on one of my blog posts, I have that in there as well. So you can go back to the blog post and try to make sense of what I was hoping to do with this thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
There's a question in the chat window about, would you consider producing a video showing how to install it, please? I know on your website you have a page that talks about it. Have you already done that?
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't created a video for it yet, but I know I need to. The reason that I don't have it available as a bundle or as a suite app is that, again, I'm just a guy working from a room in his house, right? I'm not a partner, all that good stuff. So I don't really have any easy way of creating a bundle with this thing. And that's probably the most challenging part of it, both for users, is if you've never installed a script before, it can be a little bit confusing. And it's just not how we normally load apps into NetSuite. So, I realize that's one of the limitations. I'm actually working on maybe coming up with some ways of providing it as a bundle. So.
All right.
Are there any other questions? Or?
I'm checking the chat window here. Did you answer? Oh, Mike answered yes. Custom fields and custom records are supported. And then there's also Mike posted a link to Tim's website where you can download everything, and there are instructions there how to do it as well, how to do the install.
Yeah, I think I skipped over this, but if you do check out my site and you download the tool, there's a couple other free scripts that are available on the site. And one of them is similar to the query tool. It's the SweetQL Query API. It's basically a RESTlet that you can install into your NetSuite account. And then you can then use it to do integration if you want, and basically write a query and use it to pull data out of NetSuite and bring it into an external system. So you might want to check that out if you're on the geeky side of things.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm gonna we'll stop there. We're gonna get ready for our next presenter. If you have any other questions for Tim, there's you can email him, go to his website. You can post it in the chat window. Feel free to chat him directly in the chat window if you'd like. So Tim, I think I speak for everybody when I can say mind blown. This tool is amazing. I think there are so many applications and things. Even if you're not a developer, you know, NetSuite admin there's so many things and ways that you can use this tool. So thank you so much for being here and presenting today.
Yeah, thank you. I know we covered a lot of ground, so thanks a lot.
And we'll have Dana go ahead and take over from here.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, that is a really hard act to follow, so I'm going to do my best. I've never, the fans, you got a bunch of new fans, so that's exciting. Thank you, Tim. I'm going to talk about bank recs and bank feeds, which is not an exciting topic after that. But for those of you who do bank recs, it's good to know what your options are in NetSuite because there's many. I'm going to mostly be in NetSuite today. I did want you to see that I have a slide deck that'll be out there on our site. So you can look at it later, and so you don't have to watch the recording of this part. But I'm going to go through the legacy, the matching, and the using both methods for bank recs. And then if we have time at the end, I'll talk a little bit about bank feeds. It's not going to be the majority of the presentation, though. I'll just warn you right up front. So I'm I'll just hop right over to NetSuite because then I can just show you here where everything is. When they came out with the new bank rec, it's all based on this. In the chart of accounts, there's a checkbox. So if you look at the chart, the account in the chart of accounts, there's this use match bank data and reconcile account statement pages. If you have that box checked, this account won't show up in the legacy method of reconciling your bank account, but it will show up in the match bank data. So if you need to flip back and forth between them, you come out to your account and you uncheck that box. It's the legacy way, I call it that, and I don't know if they're calling it that, but when you do it the old way, it's this way, the reconcile bank statement or reconcile credit card statement. And if you'll notice when you click on that it says it's deprecated. And I don't have any idea of if they are really going to take it away. And there's a few reasons to use it the old-fashioned way, I call it. One would be is if you have a very low volume of transactions, you could use this one. Or when you first start using NetSuite and you import a whole bunch of transactions and you want to do your first reconciliation and you've got pages, you can use this mark all here. And it doesn't have mark all in the new bank rec matching way. On the bank side, it does on the NetSuite side, but not on the bank side. So anyway, I have used it for that. I'll come in and do my first reconciliation this legacy way. Then I'll go check the box on the chart to say, now I want to use match from this point forward. It's easy. I'm listing some pros and cons here. You check the boxes. You don't have to import your transactions. It's very forgiving. You can go back to an old bank rec and fix it. You don't have to undo the reconciliation. You can just open it by coming in here and putting in the date. Actually, I need to change this to PayPal. I was going to show you PayPal. And this is not a test account. This is actually my nonprofit that I help out with, and I think we're okay. I'm not going to show you anything too crazy in here. But you can see I've actually pulled up a reconciliation that's already been saved. But if something got unreconciled, I could come out here and check the box and save and get this difference back to 0 again. One thing I wanted to show you, when you're in this old way, you can hit this history button, and I find it super helpful. because you can come back in here and see all of your old bank recs and make sure that you don't have anything historically with a difference. See this 0 column? I do have some clients that'll have a negative and a positive in here that to offset like an error that was in a former one, then they offset it. You just need the total of this difference column to be 0. Unfortunately, they don't give you a total, but if you you could export it and look at it. So this is a good way to see all of your historical bank recs. If you have a difference in any of your historical bank recs, that means that your balance sheet balance is wrong, and it is not going to match your bank account balance. And so this is a really quick way to see if you've done it right. The cons of this is it's very manual. You can't import anything. There's no automated rules for creating the transactions or for matching. It will let you save with the difference. So if you and that's why you can get out of balance. So it will let you, if you've got a difference in this column, it'll let you save it, which is not great. It is good though. If, for example, you had a difference at some point and you need to fix it with a balancing difference the other way, it's good then that it does let you save it that way. So there's pros and cons for everything on there. So just to point it out real quickly here, you have deposits and credits are on the screen. You can resort by clicking on the headers. You can't change the way that the columns are presented. You can't move them around. So that's a con. You then, if you have more than one page, you know how it only displays so many, this one doesn't have more. If you start checking boxes and then resort, you're going to lose your work. So when you're in the middle of this, you can always say complete later and then come back into it and resort. Don't try to resort after, if you've gone page to another page, you're going to lose it. And here's so you do your deposits and credits on one, your checks and payments on one, and you'll notice as you clear them, you get this total, which is nice. You can compare it to your bank statement and see if it's working. Okay, so that is the legacy bank rec. Let's see, I've got some. Yeah, once you hit save on it, it thinks you're done. And now you're going to get a report. If you go into reports, banking and budgeting, and then click on reconciliation, the report will show up. If you say complete later, it's not going to show up on there. It's just going to save your work. So you definitely want to do that judiciously, because if you say save and maybe the controller is going to go look at that bank rec and see a difference on it, you don't want to save it until you actually know you're done. Keep in mind too that bank recs are all about dates. They don't care about periods. And so if you're trying to compare your bank statement, the reconciliation statement balance, you'll want to change your reporting to you go into set preferences, and you'll want to change your reporting to say never report by period, so that you can get a balance sheet that has it based on date, because that's the only way you can compare. I hope that makes sense. And I realize I'm going fast. We just have a lot to cover. Okay, so the matching bank rec is the new way. And it's pretty nice because this bank rec summary portlet right here gets updated. If you've got your bank feeds turned on, it'll update for you. It tells you the balance, your last rec. And this actually works on the legacy way too. We'll show you your last rec too. So if you have this bank rec summary portlet on here, you can easily see where you stand with all of your bank accounts. To do the bank rec way, or the matching way, you'll go into transactions, bank, and the first thing you do is you load your file. And in this case, it's not different between credit cards and banks. It's just, you don't have to go to a different place. You come in here and you upload your file. Now, this, and I talk about it more in the slide deck, but this is where you can choose your file and you tell it if you're using a financial institution, which we'll set up at the end, or if you're importing with a default parser. So I'm going to choose a file off my desktop here. It's a QFX and OFX are the QuickBooks versions of files that you can usually get from your bank. So if you're looking at your bank account and you say download transactions and it says what format, if you pick Quicken or QuickBooks, then it should pull it up. And then you here I'll say I want to import it with the default parser. Now notice if you click on that, you do get a CSV template here. So if you don't have OFX available to you, you can create your template, download this template, transform your data that you download from your bank into this template, and then you can choose that file to upload your transactions. So that's your backup, a quick backup if you don't have any of these other BAI2, QFX, OFX, or CAMT. Now you have to tell it which account you're loading it into, and then you do your import. And I'm going to go ahead and do it, and it says track your status. So you'll see here in my banking import history, there's going to be a whole bunch of bad ones, and that's because I can't seem to get my US bank to stay connected. I think it's because of the multi-factor, and so I've had trouble with that. I know some banks, it's been successful for people to do that, and so it's too bad. I just haven't been able to get that. So now if we go into transactions bank, so the first thing we did was we imported it. I don't know why they put the match then below the reconcile, because it goes in this order: you import, you match, you reconcile. So I'm going to go into match bank data, pick my account. Now notice I only have 2 accounts that have that checkbox checked. That's why that looks like that. So this is what your screen looks like. When you're doing the match, it loads all of your bank data on this side, and and this is all of your NetSuite data, and you can limit what you're looking at. So I'm just going to say I want to do through to 28/22. Now on the NetSuite side, I would never do a from date, because you know, what if someone accidentally posted it to 21 at the beginning of the year? And you would want to know that's out there. But I usually do a through date so that I can limit what I'm looking at. All right. And then here you can move. What I like about this one is, beyond the auto match and things like that, is you can drag these columns over. So you can have your checkboxes together. You can drag this over. You can then, let's say I wanted to sort by the amount field. Now I can see these really close together. My eyes aren't going left to right on the screen. So now I can say, oh yeah, this is the same thing. I need that. Those 2 I can match. So once you click 2, you click on match and it goes away. You can also do multiple on one side and multiple on the other, which is unlike the other when you're matching on the, well, you're not matching on the other one. I guess that doesn't make sense. But now, if the one thing I want to say about this is you can, what if you had a voided check over here where you have an in and an out, and you know how the bank's not going to know about that, right? Maybe it got destroyed. You can actually click 2 things over here if they match each other, right? A negative and a positive. And then you can click the clear button and it'll go away. It'll clear it without matching it to something over here. And that would work if you wanted to do like the PayPal example I just had up the old way. If you wanted to do all of your bank recs in one method, you could use the match bank data, not import anything, and then just check the boxes and say clear. And so that's your way to use the new method without having to import the bank transactions, if that makes sense. And so you can, if you have something over here that you didn't have in your NetSuite yet, you can say add it as a journal entry, a charge, or a deposit. It brings up a little screen like this where you fill it in. You cannot change what shows up on this field. So if you have a custom segment, it's not going to show up on this field. So this only works if you're using all native fields. Another thing that I like is you can filter on anything. So they use Expensify. So I can filter on both sides because Expensify has a lot of transactions, and in this case it doesn't look like very many, but now I could check these boxes if they matched, but they don't. So I have some work to do on this, but I like the filtering, especially if you're looking for specific items. Now, I'm watching my time. I think I have 5 minutes, and so I have to go fast. And one other thing to keep in mind here, once you've matched them all, you can review your matches here. You can unmatch something if you need to by clicking on the match and saying unmatch. Excluded means these were historic ones that we brought in. So when you're in this to be matched, if you need to get something out of the way because you know you've already matched it a different way, you can check the boxes, and instead of match down here, you can say exclude. One warning is if this box is checked, if I go in here and I create a transaction and I say add this as a charge, if this box is checked, it's going to in the future create everything. It creates a rule. And so I had a problem where it booked like 5 different checks as utility expense because I didn't know that box was checked when I said I wanted to create the charge. So be very careful with that box right there. And then if you do accidentally do it, you can come up here to transactions bank and look at your reconciliation rules to see if anything was created. And it would be down in this new rules section. These are the system rules. You can uncheck them if these make sense, though. These are pretty general, but you can add new rules to say if it's this, you can say, what conditions, which account you want it for, the transaction type value. You can set up new rules. And what's nice about that is it'll just create those transactions for you directly. Okay, so once you've checked all the boxes and you've gotten rid of all of the bank side, you might have open transactions on your NetSuite side, but as long as this side is good and you've reviewed the transactions that are open to make sure that they're real, then you click on the submit button. The submit button is what's going to kind of close out those matches. And then you come over to the reconcile account statement. You can click it here, or you can do it through the transactions bank reconcile account statement right here. And then that will get you to the, and all you do here then is you put your end date and your end balance, and you make sure that this is 0. So I have had times where it gets messed up and something happens in between the submit and the reconcile and everything goes sideways. So what I've done then is if you go into your chart of accounts and you uncheck that box to do it the legacy way, you can then go in, do it the legacy way and say mark all cleared to reconcile, and it's going to find all of the ones that you've already cleared or matched, and it's going to check those boxes. And then you can usually do it really quickly in the legacy way and make sure everything looks good, save it, then come back, change your account, check that box to say you want to match, and then start matching again. Okay, bank feeds, I only have 2 minutes.
We're a little bit ahead of schedule, Dana, so we have a few extra minutes, so that's not a problem.
Okay, well, I don't want to cut into anybody else's presentations. When we do these potpourris, we fly through these topics. So there's inside NetSuite here in the accounting, this is the bank feeds. So I'm going to talk about this financial institution. So if we look at our list of financial institutions, you can set these up manually, and this is how you can do your connectivity if you want to set up your own file and do it that way. Otherwise, you need to add, there's a couple suite apps. There's the bank feed suite app that you'd want to add. So if you add the bank feed suite app, which is free, it loads this right here, this one, which is your connection to, and it's got 2 usually. I think I loaded this back before they did an update, but if I edit this bank feed, what it did was it set up these, it gives you these options and you can select. So I'm going to look at this link bank accounts. This is how I connected to US Bank to try to get it to bring it in every day. And it did work. It just broke after a couple of days. And I think it's because US Bank requires that 2-factor. And somebody here can probably, maybe during the session at the end, can tell us if they've fixed that problem. In this connectivity configuration is where you tell it, I'm connecting to US Bank and which accounts you want to connect to. And then now you could rebuild the connection every time you want to load it. If you didn't want to import your file, if I click on this rebuild, it's going to take me out to my US Bank login and it's going to rebuild the connection. And so, it'll rebuild that and import them automatically. So sometimes that's easier because maybe you have someone reconciling your bank account who doesn't have access to the bank. So then you want them to come out, you want to load it for them so that they don't have to log into the bank. I'm gonna go back and look at some of these chats to see if I can answer those before we hop out. So you think, I have not heard, Terry, if they are removing the legacy one. And if they are, I showed you how to do it in the new one by just using that clear button if you don't want to upload. High volume of accrual accounting transactions to start using bank rec in NetSuite. I think the accrual accounting shouldn't affect your bank account, but I would recommend reconciling, always reconciling in NetSuite, whether you do it the old way or the new way. And I would say the match way, if you have a high volume, is the best way to do that. Let's see. You have to ask the bank for a read-only user ID. Thank you, Lisa. So that way you can get the daily transactions. And I haven't done that, so maybe I can do that with US Bank to try to get this set up better.
And there's one other option real quick. I just wanted to mention, there's a Suite app called Auto Bank Statement Import. If you just go to Suite Apps and search for Auto Bank Statement Import, this is a Suite app that is designed to do an FTP transfer from a bank into NetSuite, because I think that they recognize that there are some banks that are not going to give up that multi-factor authentication requirement. And so it's an alternate solution.
Yes, and I've got that in my slide deck. You load both of them, the bank statement parts or Suite app with the ABSI Suite app. And again, I have not had luck with it, but and Corey and I were talking about it, he said it's kind of a doozy to set up, but once you get it set up, then it, so this is the more complicated option versus the bank feed Suite app, which tries to do most of the work for you. Dale asked a really good question, and maybe someone on the call knows, is there a hotkey for the match button? As I can see, scrolling to the bottom each time may slow the process. It's a really good question. I haven't found one. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll start at the bottom of my list so that I'm matching from the bottom up so that the match key is down there. Another thing I failed to mention is you don't want to match. You can match one at a time. That's ideal. You can also match like 5 things at a time if you want, so that you're not hitting the match key as much. The only problem with I wouldn't recommend doing 20 things at a time, because then if you have to unmatch, it unmatches all of them. And so, like I said, I will sort in such a way that I can start at the bottom of the list and hit the match key. But if anybody knows of a way to do that, you could either throw it in the chat or say it. Margie says, when you import, I believe that the first thing it does is try and match things up. So yes, it will. And then you can go to the review tab to see everything that was matched to make sure that you like how it matched them. Let's see. Yeah, that ABSI, you asked about that, Brittany, and there is some documentation out in help for it, but it's hard, and I wasn't able to get it to work. So will testing the bank feed suite app in a NetSuite sandbox cause any issues once it's set up in production? I don't think so. You would just have to reset it up though. Roy, your question on that. Remember that when you're doing the bank feeds, it's not changing anything in your GL if you don't have auto create rules set up. So you can actually test it in production because it's going into a custom record that's the bank transactions. So when you're importing your bank transactions, it's going into a custom record for the bank transactions. And then it's not changing your GL. It's only when you create that it's actually doing anything in your GL. So for me, that was helpful because then I knew that I didn't have to worry about it. If I brought in too many months or something like that, it wasn't going to do anything. And then Dale asked, okay, yeah, Brittany, do you need to manually manage the bank feed import to make sure that you don't import it more than once? No, it should recognize it. And if it does import it more than once, you can use that exclude feature if it happens where it brought it in more than once. But from what I've seen, it doesn't bring them in more than once. So what's the
Dana,
best?
I think we need to move on.
Yeah, okay.
For the sake of time, and you can respond to those questions in the chat, please.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Dana. So we're going to turn it over to Mike Kachline. Mike is going to talk to us about invoice grouping. And then when Mike is done, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So Mike, I'll let you take it over from here.
All right, thank you. All right, y'all. So I'm going to cover a function, and y'all can hear me fine, right?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm going to cover functionality in NetSuite. This is native NetSuite functionality called invoice grouping. So full disclosure, I do not use this in production, but I did, look through this, and it looks really helpful. So from a very high level, what is invoice grouping and why would you use them? So I suspect a lot of you probably have a scenario every month when you bill your customers where you generate most of your invoices through sales orders or some sort of, native NetSuite kind of way. But then you have these like little one-off bills that for whatever reason, you just have to do them through CSV or whatever. So now your customers are getting 2 invoices from you or 5 invoices and you're probably having these calls of like, can we just send them 1 invoice? And so, well, it's hard because we generate them this way or that. So NetSuite solves that through this thing they call invoice groups. So an invoice group in NetSuite is it's a record, and it allows you to take multiple invoices and put them together and present them as a single thing. So that way you can send a single PDF to your customer that, and this screenshot here gives some example or an example here that I generated. So, you can have a single amount due and a single bill address and due date and things like that, even though that amount due comes from multiple different invoices. So a couple things about the invoice group. So that is kind of what it is in the use case. You want to give a single thing to your customer, even though it's coming from multiple different invoices. You can pay on the invoice group and wind up paying all the sub invoices. So that's kind of nice. It is not GL impacting. So this is kind of a window where the actual GL impacting or GL impact is the sub invoices. So conceptually, it's still pretty easy to think so. And it doesn't like replace invoicing. It is still works alongside you. So you could still, with this turned on, you can send a invoice group and a separate individual invoice or separate invoices. Maximum number of invoices 100 for the question there. So group by what? So this, some of you may probably know more nuances than I found, but basically what I found is if you don't do anything, you just use native NetSuite, and you turn on grouping, and I'll go through that a little bit later. It will group by customer. So like if you generate 5 invoices for a customer and you tell NetSuite, please group the invoices, it'll stick all 5 together into one group. There's some caveats though. So first off, PO number. So that seems to be NetSuite definitely tells you this is the preferred way they would like you to group invoices. So if you have a customer and you have 10 invoices across the customer, but you want, 6 of them to be grouped and the other 4 to, to be, actually you want 6 of them in one group, 3 of them in another group, and then an individual, you could use PO number, the 6, you'd have all PO number 1. And I think in the screenshot here, I give that. So POZAXY, you can see how I kind of group them together based on the PO number. So that is NetSuite's recommended way to group invoices. And I say PO number, yeah, it is the PO number, or other ref num if you're a dev geek. The bill to address is something that I saw was an implied grouping. So if all your invoices have different bill to addresses, then you can't group them together. And that conceptually makes sense because NetSuite gets really confused of like, where do I send the bill to if they all have different bill to addresses? So you would want all your invoices to have the same bill to address if you want to group them together. And then the employee billable type. So I don't remember these settings now. So sorry, I'm gonna have to skip through that. But I remember that there were these preferences on the employee and billable type. All right. Some setup cheat sheets. So to turn it on, so how do I use this? This sounds really cool. So under setup, if you search for invoice groups, you'll find the checkbox called invoice groups. So you check that. I think NetSuite, when you turn this thing on, it does give you this like no going back type of warning, like you can't turn it off once you've turned it on. So heads up for that. And then there's this invoicing preferences, which is another good place once you've turned it on to go into this. NetSuite gives you this really nice like preview screen. So as you click these little boxes of like, oh, I actually want to group by, these different things or consolidate, especially with PS or SRP, it seems like they paid attention to invoice grouping when you're dealing with charge-based billing or, time T&M stuff. So that's kind of really nice. So as you check these little boxes, this preview will change so you can visually see like, oh, that's what they mean, which is, really kind of nice. So for setting this up, again, you want to enable feature invoice groups. That's this checkbox. Then you're going to want to go to page invoicing preferences and, just at least cover through this. I would highly recommend them going to page auto generated numbers. Oh, and by the way, when I say page something, what that means is you go to your global search up in NetSuite and you paste that in. So page enable features, and it will take you right to the page. Versus, wherever the hell it is, the menu bar. So enable the feature, look at the invoice preferences, and then I would highly recommend going to page auto generated numbers, and then the document numbers subtab, and putting some sort of prefix. Like I used INVGRP, I believe. Otherwise, your invoice group document number will just be a bunch of numbers. Let's see. So if you do turn it on and can't go back, can you still use it like standard invoicing? Yes. So this works alongside standard invoicing. So you could just basically mark everything as do not group, and then the features kind of a lame duck. So after you've set your document numbers, which I would recommend putting a prefix of like INVGRP, then this is where you really start turning things on. So on your customer records, you will see under the financial subtab, a new checkbox labeled group invoices. And this is what kind of hints NetSuite that you want this customer to use invoice grouping. So if you wanted it for all of your customers, you'd probably have to do like a mass update or CSV update. You will then, of course, want to make the invoice group look pretty. And that you would do through an advanced PDF template. So when you turn this feature on, there is an advanced PDF template for invoice grouping. So you would want to go and edit that template and set it up the way you want. There's two templates, actually. There's one for a summary view, and there's one for a detailed view. And then you probably also want to review the customer statement PDF template. I didn't spend too much time in this, but I know that the statements are aware of the invoice grouping as well. All right, so once you've set it up, how do you create them? There's two basic high-level flows. So there's either you're on your sales order, and on the sales order form, you will see this checkbox called for invoice grouping. So you would check that box and save the sales order. And now when you you'll click next bill on that sales order, that invoice will be eligible for being grouped. And page calling billing operations, if y'all don't know about that page, that came out, I don't know, a year ago or so, but it allows you to like mass generate invoices off of sales orders. So on page calling billing operations, they have added this checkbox called group invoices. So it basically checks this box for you when you generate the invoice from all those sales orders that you're running through billing operations. So that's the first way to do it, is the billing ops way. The second way is you could create your invoices. So this is the scenario where, yeah, okay, Mike, well, we generate most of our bills through sales orders or projects or whatever, but there's this subset of invoices that we create through CSV imports because there are special invoices. In those cases, you'd create them, however you create them, CSV import, whatever, but the integration doesn't matter. And then you go to page calling group invoices. And that is the page that I showed actually on the next slide, if I remember right. No, I think it's 2 slides ago. This one here. So this is page calling group invoices. So you'll see all of these invoices, and you can check this little group by PO box, and you'll see once you check that this sublist here refreshes, and you'll see things grouped. So how do you know they're grouped? You see them by the group indicator. So it'll tell you like, oh, this is group 1, this is group 2, 3, 4, dot, 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 dot. Okay. So the 2 ways to group is to either run it through the billing operations process or through page calling group invoices. Okay, so now you've created invoice groups. How do I see them? So one would be page calling invoice group list. So this will give you a list of all of your invoice groups. You can a couple things. If you create an invoice group and look at it and it's like, oh, we need to remove this one invoice for whatever legitimate reason, you can do that. So you can edit the invoice group and remove invoices or add new invoices to it. Payments and discounts, something worth noting is once invoices are grouped, payments and discounts are applied to the group, not to the invoice, the individual invoice. And so basically NetSuite will allow you to pay the invoice group, not to pay the invoice per se. There are scripts and workflows available on these invoice group records. So for those of you who are developers, yes, user events are there. Yes, an invoice group shows up in page calling scripted records, and workflows are there too. Save searches and analytics are available as well, although there's some caveats there that I'll cover later. And yes, these things can be shown on AR aging, but if you turn this feature on, create groups, and then go to your AR aging detail, you will not see them. So you have to customize your AR aging and add, you'll see if you search for a column called groups, you'll see them show up. And I think I had a screenshot up here where I added that. So that's really handy too. Okay, some caveats to these things that I found. So you can only group up to 100 invoices per group. Due dates and your payment terms need to be consistent across the group. So like, if you get 20 invoices and the due dates are all over the place, well, I remember right, NetSuite just picks one of the due dates. I can't remember which one, but it picks one of the due dates and sets the group to that due date. For closed accounting periods. All right, so NetSuite does make note of this, and it's kind of understandable how this could be the case. But if you have an invoice group that you created 3 periods ago, and now you close your periods every month, and now you want to go and add or remove invoices from that really old group, that could be challenging. I did not try and replicate the challenge, but be warned. NetSuite warns you that you really don't want to modify, add or remove invoices from groups where the groups were created in a closed period. I found that you cannot credit memo the invoice group, which is interesting. You can pay the invoice group, but can't credit memo it. So what I found is you have to credit the individual invoices in the group, which is probably fine for most cases. I did not find a CSV import, so I did not find a way to CSV import CSV groups, so you can't create them or update them through CSV. And also, I did not find them under the mass update. So fair warning, if you create these things en masse and then you want to change them en masse, CSV and mass update will not be your friends there. Analytics search is not very helpful. So if I remember right, in the analytics search, I found that you couldn't dive into the underlying invoices. You couldn't join into the underlying invoices, which was not very helpful, but in the saved searches, you could. And then, this last bullet, finding the invoice group from the invoice is difficult. So like, unless maybe somebody here can post like, oh, Mike, you missed it. It's buried under blah. When I added invoices to a group and then clicked into the invoice and asked myself, which group is this in? There was no answer. So I think the answer, other than go do a save search and all that hoo-ha. So I think it will almost be required that you would want to create a custom body field that uses, a search to show you which invoice group the invoice is attached to, if any. All right, and more info on this topic. So NetSuite does have a really good write-up on invoice groups that is in help. So if you go to NetSuite help and search for invoice groups overview, you should get something that looks like this. And again, they walk you through the whole process. It's pretty decent documentation, quite honestly. It's what drove this talk. All right, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Can you group invoices by status open is a question. I did not see that, but I'm trying to think of how you could do that. I think the answer is no, or if you can, it would be a trick. There'd be some sort of trick to do that. I can tell you also the status of your invoices change when they're grouped. So NetSuite gives you a write-up about this. Like today, like if an invoice is open, you click into the invoice and it says open. But if it's in an invoice group and it's open, it will have a status of grouped dash open or open dash group, something like that. So the status is slightly changed for invoices that are inside of a group. I don't know as a developer if that means that your scripts all break with those, now that I think, as I say that out loud. Any other questions? All right, that is it. Hopefully, oh, what is attached to the PDF? So okay, yeah, so Darcy, yeah, thank you for the clarification. So the invoice group PDF, I think I had an example up here. This was the detail PDF, if I remember right. So there's basically a summary and a detail. So if you look, you can see, you know, a sublist of all the invoices in the group and how those add up to your total. But then you can also, on the detail view, you can see for each invoice, the item record and the rate and all that. So like you can have your cake and eat it too, basically. Let's see. Clarification, payments applied to the group, but credits applied to the invoice. I don't know what you're asking there. So I think, so Jeff, what I did see was when you, I specifically actually use the payment link. So NetSuite has this payment link feature where you can pay directly. And that paid the invoice group, not the invoice. But if you pull up an invoice group record, there is no credit button, which is kind of like, oh, I can't do a credit memo on that. Does a group invoice have a different invoice number and also list grouped invoice numbers with it? So somebody can still pay by invoice number, but if they do, it makes a payment against the invoice group. That's my understanding. But if you pay the invoice group, it applies to the underlying invoice or invoices. And I might get that somewhat wrong. Somebody may know a little bit better than me there, but they are, yes, you can pay either. All right, any other questions?
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So the next part of our meeting today is going to be talking about the payment link feature. So real quick, I'm Corey Anderson. I've been working with NetSuite for a little over 9 years now. I started working with an end user company. We bought NetSuite and implemented it. And then I was working with a consulting firm for a few years. And now I'm an independent NetSuite and Seligo consultant. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I will be switching back and forth between NetSuite and my slideshow, so hopefully that works out well. All right, so first of all, what is Payment Link? So the Payment Link feature allows your customers to conveniently pay an invoice online using a computer or mobile device. Instead of having to contact you and discuss payment, your customers can receive an email of the invoice with a link to the payment page. They can choose which method they want to use to pay, including ACH, credit cards, and PayPal from a list that you have selected. I will talk about the requirements for each of those payment types as I go through the presentation here. And in the left-hand side, there's a quick preview of an email that somebody might receive with that Pay Now, but I will have some screenshots of what that looks like a little bit later here. All right, I'll go ahead and move on. So what are the features of the payment link? First of all, you add a link to invoices that are sent to your customers. The link can be in an email. It can also be in the PDF printout document or an HTML printout from those invoices. You can allow partial payments, and that is your choice. You can require full or partial payment. You can include your company logo and info on the payments page. You can customize email templates that are used to inform customers of accepted or rejected payments. And I'll point that out here as well. You can use a link or a QR code in an email for customers to go directly to. And then on the payment link checkout page, a customer can review the invoice, choose a payment method, and submit payment. And I'll show you some examples of what that will all look like. So the prerequisites to using the payment link feature. First of all, you have to enable payment instruments. To enable payment instruments, you can go to Setup Company, Enable Features, Transactions, and Payment Processing. I will note that the payment instruments feature is part of the new PCI. I think it's really being pushed by Visa specifically, but it's part of PCI requirements. And it does change the way that the credit card and payment information shows up on the different transactions, such as cash sales or invoices in NetSuite. So if you enable this feature, be aware that it'll change where you enter the credit card and information like that. If you have a lot of users, or maybe if you have physical credit card machines that you accept payment on, this can potentially affect how all of that works. So you definitely want to enable this in a sandbox environment if you can. Test it out, make sure that all of the users who enter credit card information or payment information in NetSuite understand how this works. Because it does change things. You also have to allow online credit card payments, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute, some requirements around that. You do have to set up one or more payment methods in NetSuite. You have to set up and assign payment processing profiles for each credit card gateway you want to use. You can use more than one credit card gateway, but you typically, if you choose one credit card processing company, they'll typically have the ability to accept the main 4 credit card types. So you probably only need one, but there are reasons you might need more than one. And then also you need to set up domain keys identified mail, otherwise known as DKIM, to authenticate emails coming from your account. So this is basically a process where you put a text record on your domain, on your DNS records that you would do on your domain registrar, and you authenticate that with the DKIM setup in NetSuite. And that basically makes it so that when you send an email from NetSuite, the end user's email system trusts the emails because it's coming from an authenticated domain, your domain. If you don't do this, it's possible that the people that you're sending invoices or any email to, for that matter, their email processors or their email systems may reject those emails because they don't trust them, or they may mark them as spam. All of how to set that up is documented in NetSuite. Just go to Suite Answers and search for DKIM. You do have to have access to your domain registrar and be able to add DNS records for that to be set up correctly. So let's talk a little bit about credit card processors. There are many different credit card processors that you can use in NetSuite. There is an article that has an in-depth discussion on the credit card processors. There's the link there. I'm also going to post that in the chat window here. Hang on just a moment here. So there's the link to that article. So I think this article was written, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, so there may be slightly different features now, but it has a really great overview of the credit card processors. The credit card processors will have setup fees and recurring monthly gateway fees in addition to per transaction fees. And what I was actually going to do for this presentation is set up the payment link in the user group's production account. Through my research through the process, it doesn't make sense for us to do it because it requires a setup fee, which one processor I talked to was $300, and then a monthly gateway fee, which I think can range between $30 to $50 per month. For the user group's purposes, we don't have enough transaction volume for that to make sense. But I think in a lot of cases, it does make sense to have those. But those fees will be slightly different based on the credit card processor that you go with. And that website at timblairwhite.com, we'll talk about some of that information as well. So there is a question real quick. Does the payment link work with sales order and quote? As far as I know, it only works with invoices. It's only designed to work on the invoice records. All right. So the next thing is ACH and PayPal. So ACH, there's only one company that is certified to do the payment link, which is VersaPay. So you must use VersaPay's SoluPay for NetSuite Suite Payments Suite app. And so if you go to the Suite app tab in your NetSuite instance and search for VersaPay SoluPay for NetSuite Suite Payments, you'll see the information there, and then you can contact VersaPay. So to be able to accept ACH payments through this payment link feature, you have to use that solution. There are no other options out there. And then to also be able to use PayPal and use PayPal's payment processing features, you have to use PayPal Payflow Pro, which there's nothing available in Suite apps information about that, but you can contact PayPal if you use PayPal on what that would look like. And both of these require setup fees and monthly gateway fees for those functionality, those features as well. Okay, and then Mike has a note worth noting: if you send any emails out of NetSuite to customers, you really want this DKIM to be set up. You'll need admin access to NetSuite and then access to your company's DNS. I agree. It should be just something that is set up from the beginning, the DKIM features. It should just be done pretty much no matter what. Okay, so we're going to talk about 4 steps that are required to use the payment link, or the setup steps, I should say. First of all, enable the payment link in company preferences. You then have to configure the payment link. Then you customize the payment link email templates, which you don't absolutely have to do that, but you probably would want to. And then you set up the payment link invoice templates. So I'll go through each of these setup steps here real quick. So first of all, enable the payment link feature. You'll go to setup company enable features and then transactions. And then once enabled, there will be a payment link configuration option under commerce. I'll go into NetSuite here and show where these things are after I go through another setup or two here. The next step is to configure the payment link. You'll go to commerce and then payment link, and I'll go through these settings in the NetSuite account here in just a minute. The next step would be to customize the payment link email templates. You'll go to setup company system email templates. So these are a little bit different. These are not the email templates that you would send from a transaction record. Like, these are not the invoice printing templates. These are system email templates. And there's 2 system email templates that apply to the payment link setup. There's a payment confirmation and a payment declined notification. So when your customers pay through the payment link, one of these 2 emails is going to be sent to your customer. And so you definitely want to customize these, maybe put your company logo on there. You can put extra contact information. At the bare minimum, preview it to make sure that what your customers are seeing is what you would expect them to be seeing. And I'll show you where those are here in a minute as well. The next setup step is going to be set up the invoice templates. So there's a couple of pieces to this. First of all, you need to decide whether to send the invoice as HTML in the body of the message or attached to the email as a PDF. To set this preference, you would go to Home, Set Preferences, Transactions, and then Printing, and then choose HTML or PDF in the Transaction Email Attachment form field. I'll show you where that is. This, to note this, is this is a per user setting. And if you have custom roles, which you should have custom roles that your end users are using, you can define this preference. You can preset this preference. And most people don't need to know about it, frankly. If you have a company preference one way or another, you set this. However, even though you set the company preference on the role, it does not restrict them from changing it. So if you have users that everybody is sending PDFs, but you have one user, when they send an invoice, it comes in an HTML format, it's in their personal preferences that they need to go and change that. You also need to enable the advanced PDF and HTML templates. To enable this feature, you go to Company Enable Features, SweetCloud, Suite Builder. I'm going to show, Mike actually had a screenshot of how to quickly find a setting in the setup. I'll show you that. It's my preferred way of finding the features in the setup menu. And then once you have those things done, then you want to configure the invoice form. And that's under Customization Forms, Transaction Forms. And then when you change that, when you get to that form, you're going to choose the printing type of advanced, and then you'll select the payment link templates for the print and email templates. So let me jump into NetSuite, and I'm going to go through some of these setup areas real quick. hopefully this switches over easily. Okay, here we go. I was looking at the invoices as Mike was talking there. All right, so here's a demo account. So first of all, to enable the payment link feature, we'll go, I just like to click on the setup manager. Instead of, you can go to company setup enable features, and you can search through all of the features and try and find the stuff here. But if you just go to setup manager, and then in this search box, type in what you're looking for, then it'll come up with options of where to find those. And all you have to do is click on it. And it takes you to where that feature is. You still don't know where it is, but if you scroll down, look for the thing that's highlighted in red, and you can see that that's the feature that you're looking for. Both of these are linked to the exact same place in this case. So you can see that we already have payment link enabled in this account. So the next step is to configure the payment link settings. So we'll go to Commerce and Payment Link. And here's our payment link setup page. So here you would put in your domain prefix. So your domain is the domain of your company. You want the emails to come from that domain. So it is required to set up there. Once you have payment methods and payment processing profiles set up in your account, those will show as available here. If you come to this setup and there's no payment method set up, it means that you don't have a payment processing profile set up correctly, and that has to be done first. The next thing here is where we can choose to accept partial payments or not. You can just uncheck that. Add your company logo to the payment link payment page. And then you also can put in your company name here, which it'll default to whatever your company name is on file in NetSuite. And then you can also have some company information in there. And then our email templates. So these are the two system email templates that I referred to. If you configure those or customize them, the options will be listed here for the custom options, but the default are payment link, payment confirmation, and payment link payment decline notification. I'm going to look at the chat window here for questions real quick. Paystand does ACH, as does Merchant E. Yeah, so that's a good point, Doug. Actually, many of these processors have their own payment link features where you can install their bundles and their processes into NetSuite and use their functionality. But you have to go through that company and do that setup. What I'm showing you today is how to do it without using a third party's payment link setup and features. And then let's see, Lainey from VersaPay clarified that the link you sent, SoluPay, does equal VersaPay. They are the same company. And VersaPay, as I just mentioned, does the ACH. They have their own feature to do this as well. But again, my point was to make sure that everybody knows that you can do this directly. This is native functionality in NetSuite that you don't have to go through another company for, but you do have to have a credit card processing profile. Okay, so to set up the credit card processing profiles, I'll just point to this real quick. You would go to Setup Company, or maybe it's under Accounting. Sorry, I can never remember. Accounting, Payment Processing.
Oh, okay, you got it.
Yeah, got it, thanks. Payment Processing Profiles. So if you were going to work with any of the main credit card processors, I'm not going to mention them. You can go look at that website, and that credit card processing, there's a bunch of them listed there. You would set it up here. You'd click New Payment Processing Profile, and that they'll typically have instructions on how to help you set that up, but there's also instructions in Suite Answers to help with this as well. And then the company email templates, the system email templates, you go to Setup Company, System Email Templates, and then I'll just search for payment. So here's your two payment link templates. You can customize those here. When you customize it, it's just kind of like a WYSIWYG. There's also some, you can do it in HTML if you're comfortable that way. So you customize those there. I'm not going to go into the advanced PDF or setting it up on the forms right now, but if you would want to do that, you go to forms, customization forms, transaction forms. And then you would again find the payment link. There's a default payment link. I thought there was.
Did you want the advanced PDF? You're in transaction forms.
Oh yeah, the advanced PDFs has a payment link default one, but in the transaction forms, this is where you would want to modify the form, and you would create the advanced PDF. You can use the default one, but then you'd also want to modify this to make sure. Hang on one second while this loads up. Demo count, loading. I'll show you real quick. On our user group website, if you go to posts, we have a advanced PDF meeting that we did last year. That was Jillian Pearson from Bailey did a killer job at walking us through how to set up advanced PDFs. It's a 1-hour presentation. I highly recommend that if you haven't ever set up or customized advanced PDFs before. So here's our transaction form. This is our preferred invoice form. So we would want to, after we set up our advanced PDF templates, we go to advanced, and then we choose the either the standard payment link, here's a custom payment link invoice, and we'd set that for each of those options, print template or email template. I think that was the main things I wanted to show you in NetSuite. There's a lot of configuration that you need to do, but these are the steps that you need to go through to do that. So I'm going to switch back to my my slide deck here, and I'll show you a preview of what some of the payment link would look like to your customers. So on this part here, this is the email. So this is the invoice email with the payment link. So you would click on this pay now, or you can copy the link to the clipboard and go to a browser window and paste it in there. Once you do that, it'll take you to the payment link page, which I'll show you a preview of here. You can also see that this one has an HTML invoice attached to it. If you choose the PDF function, this would be a PDF. Once they open that up, this is what it would look like. So there's the invoice with the payment link. There's a QR code. So you can take your mobile phone, you can scan that QR code, and it'll take you to the payment link page. I'll show you the mobile view of that here in a minute. There's also a link right down here underneath that QR code. If you don't want to use your phone, you can just click on the link and it takes you to a page that looks like this. So this is the payment link, the payment page that your customers might see. This isn't customized, but you could have your logo and information there. So you can see this is the payment amount for that invoice. It gives you details here, and then there would be a pay button down at the bottom of this. I don't have a screenshot of that. If you allow partial payments, then you could click in here, or once your customer goes to pay, they would click into this, change the amount and hit save, and then they can just do a partial payment against that. Once they complete that payment, this is the message that they'll see. And then you'll notice it says you will receive an email with your payment confirmation. And so that would be one of the 2 email templates that you set up, either the payment accepted or the payment decline. And then here is a view of the mobile payment version. So if you click on that QR code, this is what you would get to. Okay, so I am just a minute or 2 over. I'm going to go to, let me see if there's any questions. If a customer paying by a credit card on a payment link, is there a way to automatically add a credit card convenience fee, or would that all be through the credit card processor? I believe you would probably have to put that in on the invoice, Alex. You would have to have a separate line on the invoice. If I don't actually know. There's the credit card processor may put that on there. That's a good question. I don't know. If anybody knows, please feel free to post a reply to that. If a customer uses payment link to pay, is payment automatically applied to the invoice and recorded in GL? Yes, it is. That's the beauty of it. Once they pay through that, it automatically puts that customer payment against the invoice and it hits the GL. So it's all there automatically. And Jim, is payment link a standard feature in NetSuite? Yes, it is. All you have to do is enable it and configure it like I've showed you today. Linda, we have field offices in Mexico and Haiti that we send wires to every month. We would be able to send them money via ACH using this feature and avoid wire fees. I would say yes in theory, but if they're sending you invoices and they've set up the ACH on their end, then you could potentially pay that way. If you're just paying ACH in terms of as if they were a vendor though, you would use a different feature in NetSuite to do that. You'd use like the electronic bank payments. Mike says when the payment link payment is made, what I saw is that customer payment record is, yep, got that. Okay, thanks, Mike. Who exactly gets the payment confirmation email? It would be the person or the email that's on the invoice that it went to initially. And then Doug, saw you pay will add it if allowed in your state. Okay, thanks, Doug. And then no problem. Okay, great. Well, I think that's it. I'm a little over time, so I'm not going to take any more questions. If you have any more questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Thank you for your time. And I'll be back. I'm going to talk about the 2022.1 updates for you here in a few minutes. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to Margie Cominos. Are you there, Margie? You are muted.
Myself. Yeah,
There
I'm
you are.
unmuted now.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you can hear me and you can see, everybody see my screen now?
Yes,
PowerPoint
yes, we can.
presentation?
Looks good.
Okay, great. Good morning. So I am Margie Cominos, and I am going to be talking about the power of the post-vendor bill of variances page. I know you thought it was matching bills to receipts and POs, but that's really just a subset. So I was thinking, well, that doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people. So I really want to talk about this post-vendor bill variances page, which I'm going to refer to as the variance page. So I am the NetSuite administrator for PlantScan Corporation, which is an engineering, manufacturing, distribution company for ultrasonic leak detectors in the B2B environment. I've been using NetSuite 20 years, and I also do part-time NetSuite consulting. So this section that I'm going to be talking about, first of all, it's only relevant if you're using or considering using inventory in NetSuite, and if you're doing item receipts separate from the billing, which is called advanced receiving, which most people that have inventory are doing. I'm using screenshots instead of actually going to be demoing live for a couple reasons. One, because I really don't have things that end up there very often, that stay there, because I clean it out every week in this post-vendor bill variance page. And when you're going, well, what does she mean by clean it out? You'll see momentarily. So I wanted to, the other reason I'm using screenshots is because I had rotator cuff surgery on my right shoulder and I'm right-handed. So I struggle using my mouse with my left hand, and it would be frustrating not just for me, but for you too. So moving on, what is this post-vendor bill variance page? This is what it looks like. And if you aren't familiar with it and you're using inventory, I highly advise that you start looking at it. You get there by looking at transactions, payable, post-variance, post-vendor bill variances, or you can just type it in your global search or create a shortcut. So why am I bringing this up? Well, first of all, it's a standard NetSuite page. I call it a feature because it has a lot of power in it. It's free. Anybody that has inventory has this. And I found that most of my clients were either very confused by this this page, or they weren't using it effectively, or didn't quite understand some of the subtle nuances of it. This meant that they had unresolved errors between their inventory receipts and their associated bills, which needed to be corrected or written off. So basically, anything that shows up here, it identifies anything that is a quantity, pricing, or exchange rate variance between your item receipts and your bills. And it provides a list of those transactions that need to be investigated for correction or write-off. Also, it provides the ability to auto-create journal entries for getting rid of those small dollar amounts where appropriate. So I'm going to be talking first about the one on the left, which is the purchase order, transaction type equals purchase order, and then the one on the right, bill. And when do you use which, and which is the better way to go, and why do some things show up under one and not under the other? So if you do nothing in NetSuite and do no setup, you will see that under purchase order, you might have a number of transactions, where under bill, you won't have any if you haven't set up this other feature called match bill to receipt. So we're going to focus first on this purchase order one. So this, on the purchase order, it identifies, as I mentioned in the last slide, it shows any POs that have any quantity, pricing, exchange rate differences between all the item receipts and all the bills for that line item. So it's per line item in your PO, but it combines them, so it weights. So if you get a partial shipment and you get a partial bill, and then you get more partial shipment and a partial bill, it won't show up here until that line item has been completed or you've closed it. So then it also does one other thing. It compares the sum quantity to the PO quantity for that line item. So if there are items that still show as not received or billed, it will not even show up on this page because the line item is not considered complete and it hasn't been closed. This is important because there are line items that should appear here but aren't. For example, if you have a PO line item with a quantity of 50 at $1 a piece, but you receive 51 and you're billed for 50, and you're never going to be billed for that extra one piece, you'll never show here because the line item will stay open expecting to be billed for the other one piece. Alternatively, if you receive 49 at $1.10 instead of $1, and you billed for 49 at $1, it will never show, even though it should, because there's a discrepancy there, because it's still waiting for the line to close. It's waiting for that 50th piece. So you have to manually go to that purchase order and close that line before it will appear here. So oftentimes people, at some point they go, oh, we should be closing all these old POs. And then suddenly this page is filled with record line items that are showing that there are discrepancies, and they're like, whoa, where did that come from? That's because that PO line wasn't closed. The whole PO doesn't need to be closed, just that line item. The next slide, we'll be talking about how to avoid this problem and a much easier way to use the system. So no setup is required, which is great. And what is this good for? It's good if you buy something from a vendor, I don't know, Amazon or any other vendor, and you pay in advance and usually get all items at the same time, and you don't receive, usually don't receive less quantity or more quantity than billed for. So that's what it's good for. Moving onward, we're looking now at the transaction type equal bill. So when do things show up here? That's if you have this match bill to receipt box checked either on your PO or on your item, because from the item it carries over to the PO. So what this does, it displays any bills that have a quantity difference or amount difference between the bill quantity and amount and its related item receipt quantity and amount. So it's looking for a one-to-one. So bill, item receipt and bill Is there a discrepancy? And it could be multiple item receipts to one bill. So it looks for those multiple item receipts in that single bill. Is there a discrepancy? So this is really good if you buy something from a vendor, but might not get all the items at the same time, but you are billed for whatever items you were sent. Or if you get normally partial shipments, or you get an overage on a quantity that you were never billed for, or if you get less items than on the PO and you'll never get the remaining items. It doesn't, in other words, it does not depend on the PO line. The one caveat, the one thing I want to bring up is if you go this route and you need to prepay, then I recommend that you use the enter prepayment option on the PO. Vendor prepayment is a simple way to set up. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes depending on the permissions for the various roles, but it's very simple and it doesn't get in the way of it appearing here, because otherwise if you, and I'll talk about this later, but otherwise there's one extra step you have to do if you end up billing in advance of item receipt. So where is the match bill to receipt checkbox? It is located on the item record and it's located on the purchase order, provided of course no one's modified your forms and that they're still there. Otherwise you just need to go modify your purchase order form, make sure that it's visible and in the appropriate place so you can see it. So if you put it on the item record, and it doesn't have to be an inventory item, it could be an assembly item that you purchased, you click on the match bill to receipt box here under item cost detail. And then when you create a PO that includes this item, it'll automatically populate the match bill to receipt to yes. Now you can always uncheck it if you want. And if you decide not to go to this route, you can always do it individually on each purchase order line, but don't really recommend that. So now that you see things in these in this variances page, what do? Well, you could write it off, and we'll go through that in a few minutes where you create the journal entries. But first, you need to make sure that it's not an error. So someone did an item receipt for one amount and quantity, and then the bill was for something, a different quantity or a different rate. So you need to investigate. So now I'm going to show the difference between the two, whether you're using purchase order or bill, and you'll start to be able to see the value of doing it with the bill, which means you check the match bill to receipt. So the investigation begins. We have a match bill to receipt. You click on the transaction number. That's the first thing. So you just click on this. It'll bring up the purchase order automatically for you. Then you need to look at the item receipts and bills for that PO. So normally what comes standard with NetSuite in a purchase order is receipts and bills. However, if you look at receipts and bills, it doesn't show the quantities for either the bill or the item receipt, nor does it show the amount for the item receipt. So what is recommended is that you create another safe search and probably make it a custom sublist where you can see that I've done that here, where it shows the receipts and the bills for the item for the PO. So it shows all of the receipts and the items for all the receipts and the bills for all of the items. So you can start seeing that here they were received and billed for 300 and they received and billed 400. You can start to see for the 300 that the price, the amount was off. And for the 400, the amount was off too. So then you've got to decide, do you fix it or write it off? So then you probably need to start drilling into the bill and to the item receipt and decide which is correct. Imagine, this only had 2 line items. Imagine you had 30 line items on that PO. And then imagine that some of them were partial receipts. You could end up with 90 or so, 80, 100 line items here where you've got to, and you can sort this, from a custom sublist, or if you made this just a saved search, you could do it outside of the PO itself. But imagine how much work that would take to try and figure out where it is off. That is why I definitely recommend using the next the match builder receipt that we're taking a look at. But there is something that can help you. And if you do this method, I highly recommend that you check the box on the sublist on your form, on the sublist fields, and you add bill variance status, because that will show you whether there's no variances, a journal not posted, a journal's been posted. If it has, it'll actually have the link to that journal. Or if it's blank. If it's blank, it means either the line item is not complete. So it's never, if it's blank, it's never going to appear, even if there's a discrepancy on that variance page. So the next example is, what if you have match bill to receipt checked? So then you just simply click on the bill. So it's not at a PO level, it's at a bill level. And you do that, and you can see here, what you do from the bill is you click on the item receipt. And there might be one, there might be two. Usually there's just one, but there might be more than one. You click on that and you start to look at where are the quantity and where are the rate differences. So here, look how easy it is to simply identify what you've received and been billed for, and then go, oh, wow, okay, well, that was because we got these decals, these labels, and they were shipped, and they sent, 3 over. We're never going to be billed for those. So now you know, in this case, you actually need to maybe write it off instead of fixing anything. So you can see how much easier it is and less work, because it's the item receipt and the bill you're looking at one-to-one. So in this case, we'd want to write this off. The way you do that is you check the box, you go back to the variance page, you check the checkbox, and you click Create Journal Entry. The one thing I want you to know that until you test it out or find out the hard way, if you click multiple boxes, it's going to create one journal entry for everything. So a lot of times I think it's just easier if you have one journal entry for each of these. So you need to select them separately and just do one at a time. Bill, journal entry, create journal entry. So, and what that does, another important thing, if you're going to create journal entries, there's some extra steps when we get to the setup. I'll be showing you that in order to create the journal entries, you have to have some accounts set up so it knows where to basically write them off to, what to use for that journal entry. So here's an example of what it looks like. If you go in, this is inventory received not billed. Inventory received not billed is where all of your items, your bills, and your item receipts are. And really this should end up in a perfect world as 0. If you received everything, you billed everything, it should be 0. But all these things get stuck in the inventory received not billed because they need to be either fixed or written off. So in this case, when I selected Create Journal Entry, you can see that it went to this special bill quantity variance account that I had set up. So now if you add up the item receipts that added up to this amount, if you add up the bill amount and this variance, they add up and it balances out to 0. So which way do you want to go? I say basically go to match bill to receipt every time, but there are some people that will want to use the purchase order, and that's fine. It's a more challenging analysis if you have a lot of line items. You need to create a saved search or custom sublist to help with that analysis. You need to create a saved search to find open line items on POs that really should be closed. It's good for if you normally pay in advance of receipt, because you don't have to do that vendor prepayment, although that's very easy once it's set up. It's simply, you click a box and it takes care of it for you when you actually pay the bill, if you do the auto apply on. And it's good if you usually receive all items on the PO line in the same accounting period. But you want to use match bill to receipt. It's easier analysis. It's a bit more time consuming to set up. There's no saved search required. Occasionally, if you pay in advance, you use that vendor prepayment. You may receive overage for which you won't be billed. You may receive less quantity for which you won't be billed. Perfect time to use match bill to receipt if that happens. And what's really important is if you receive partials with bills that span accounting periods, because then you can make your corrections within the appropriate accounting period. Whether it's a correction to the item receipt or the bill, or if it's something that should be written off. So to do the setup, everybody has to have advanced receiving, must be enabled. That's what allows you to have the bill separate from the item receipt. If you want to do auto creation of journals, I've basically listed here what you need to do to set those up, setting up your accounts in the global setting, and doing a mass update to update your existing items to use those defaults. If you're using match bill to receipt, you need to do this extra step. When I said it's more complex setup, is that you do a CSV export, import to update your existing item records. And then I highly recommend that you create a simple workflow, I mean like a 15-minute workflow to check the match bill to receipt field on all new items. If you're not using match bill to receipt, then you highly recommend that you add this bill variant status. And you can also use that to help with your search that you need to create to find open POs that should be closed. And you also need to create that search to display all receipts and bills, or make a custom sublist to be able to do your analysis. And probably most important is train your users on this feature and steps to fix problems identified by the post-vendor bill variance page. So I don't know, I set my timer, but I forgot to hit start. So do I have any time left to answer questions?
Yeah, we should be good, Margie.
Okay. Oh, I did want to add one other thing that Lisa also brought up that I have found, that it doesn't play well with credit memos. So NetSuite sort of forgot that one piece. So if anybody has a really good way to handle that, I'd appreciate you mentioning it here. What I've done is, instead of the credit memo, I've gone in and either in the PO or in the bill, just made an expense line item for the difference, or I've gone in and just in the bill itself made the correction there, like I'd already received the credit memo. So, are there any questions?
There's one Margie in the chat.
Can this be done if you do not hold an inventory? If you do not hold, if you don't have inventory turned on, I'm not really sure the question. If you want to unmute and ask that question, Katie, I'd appreciate it, because I don't really understand the question. The next question, meanwhile, should this be done with companies who only have non-inventory items and service items? No, because you don't do any item receipt for non-inventory items. So I would not do this for that. And can you set POs up to auto default check the match to receipt box? Well, if you have the item checked, it'll automatically flow through. Otherwise, the question is a maybe, and that's because you have to use you'd have to do a workflow to have that checked. You have to do a workflow in order to go through to the line item and see if that could be checked for you. But if that's the case, then you might as well have checked it in the item record, which flows through to the PO. So Katie, can you unmute? Let's see. Oh, okay. Apparently there's a new ability to do vendor bill variances on non-inventory items. I did not know that. Thank you, Bill. I've been having difficulty reconciling my received not invoice GL account. I have balanced enough through all post-vendor bill variances have been cleared. Has any reporter recommended running to help reconcile this account? Well, this would probably be a good Dana question, but I'm wondering if it's because you have open POs, the open lines on POs that really should be closed. So otherwise, if it's sort of in the in the past that you have a problem, then I'm not really sure. So I think Dana would be the appropriate person to. Dana, are you on that you can answer that question? Also,
I am on. It's not. I think it's not like the bank rec. It's a different. You're looking at an account balance and you're saying, where's this coming from? And she's saying she's posted all the variances so that it should have cleared out. So I see that Lisa said, look at purchase order history report. I don't know. You'd have to dig into the ins and outs of that account. And you can do that by matching on the related purchase order, because the bills and that's your in between the bill and the fulfillment. But
the purchase order history report is very useful because it shows you total billed, total received, and variance and total.
Oh, good.
I use that too. I have my clients using that report for that very reason.
Yeah.
But as far as Larry's question, Larry, are you using the purchase order or are you using the bill? Do you use match bill to receipt or are you using the purchase orders? Because if you can answer that question, because if you're using the purchase orders, then it's probably because you have open line items that really should be appearing and variances entered. So, all right, great. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions that arise, I didn't get the answer, here's my email address. Please feel free to email me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margie. Share my screen. And here we go. Okay, so we are going to talk about the 2022.1 new release highlights. I was going to do the new release top 10, but frankly, I had a hard time finding 10 that I thought were really great. And so I think that this release seems, there's just not a lot of like really amazing things. There are some very important things that we'll talk about, I think, that are good to know about. But I was underwhelmed by this new release. And I just want to also say that the board, the members of the board contributed to the topics that we talk about in the new release. So there may be something to you that's like earth-shattering that we don't talk about, that's important to your business. And I apologize if we missed that, but anyway, this is kind of a little bit of a guess of what everybody would think is great with the new release. So one thing that I will also say is that the new release notes, they change them almost weekly up until the new release. And so one of the things that was in the very first release of the notes was the Cash 360 functionality, Cash 360 dashboard, which is something they've been talking about for a while now. But then in the second version of the release notes, there was zero mention of Cash 360. So Mike Kachline, I know that you were excited about that. I'm excited to see what it's supposed to do and be, but it's not in there anymore. So I think they're postponing it. Yeah, Roy, I know everybody's waiting for it. So anyway, they change it. So what I say here may change, so please don't take my word for it. All right, so the first thing that we'll talk about is customer scheduled maintenance. So over the course of this release, some customers whose production accounts are located in NetSuite data centers that are built on the OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, will be able to upgrade to 22.1 using the customer scheduled maintenance feature. Administrators whose NetSuite accounts are selected to use this new feature will receive email notifications with the necessary instructions. If you do not receive the email about how to do this, then that means it's not available to your account. And so not all NetSuite accounts are on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure data centers. I think that long-term, Oracle seems like their goal is to have them have everything migrated to the Oracle data centers. But we'll just have to kind of see. So that's I think a cool feature that we could never do before. There are several enhancements to suite approvals, so I'll have a few different things to talk about here. So if you're not familiar with suite approvals, it is NetSuite's pre-built record approval system. And so this picture on the left, if you install this in your account, it installs this workflow, and you can actually go see this workflow. It's completely locked down and you can't do anything with it. But as you can see, it's pretty complex. There's a lot of capabilities to it. And I think it's, for some instances, it works really well. One of the main drawbacks that I've just encountered with suite approvals is that when you have an approval rule set on to run on a specific record, you can't submit the record into the approval process. It automatically moves into the approval process and you don't have any control of that. So maybe hopefully that'll be something that comes in the suite approvals in the future. But as far as I know, you can't say submit for approval and then it moves into the suite approvals process. It's automatic. So anyway, these are some new features of suite approvals, record locking and reapproval. So the approval rule page and approval rule assistant now include a section called Setup, Locking, and Reapproval. This section includes the following capabilities: record locking based on approval status. So when creating approval rules, you have the following record locking options: lock records in pending approval or approved status, or both, or allow editing of records regardless of approval status. So that one right there, that's kind of the safety net of having the records automatically go into the suite approvals process. You can choose to allow the editing of the records after they've been approved, which is, for some companies, that's a required feature. This capability applies to purchase orders, vendor bills, and expense reports. And so suite approvals actually can apply to many different record types: purchase orders, vendor bills, expense reports, sales orders. There's some others that I don't remember for sure, but there's a lot of information in Suite Answers about it. The next thing is setting of percentage or amount tolerance limits. You can set tolerance limits to control whether records are rerouted for approval. Tolerance limits affect only pending approval and approved records. The system reroutes records for approval using the same approval rule if the change in the record amounts exceed the set percentage or amount tolerance. You have the option to disallow rerouting regardless of changes in record amounts. This capability applies to purchase orders, vendor bills, and expense reports as well. The next thing is the suite approvals portlets, which I think is pretty cool. If you look at on the left-hand side, you go to your home page and you click on personalize, and then this standard content, here, let me see if I can point to this. This standard content is where it'll be automatically, and it'll show like save searches and KPIs and stuff like that that you can add to your dashboard. You have to click on the Suite Apps section, and then you'll see these two portlets, and you can add these portlets to your dashboard. So what they do is, one is records for approval. Aside from vendor bills, you can now see the number of purchase orders and expense reports for your approval. The portlet lists the records by type and shows how many records you need to approve. The record type name on the portlets links to a page from which you can access the records. Previously, you could set up the records that require your approval in the reminders portlet. So you can click on that and then go and do that. But this is a pre-built portlet for that now. And then the suite approvals reminder specifically for vendor bills, purchase orders, and expense reports. This portlet lists the pending approval and rejected records per record type for the whole account. Each status links to a page that shows the list of pending approval and rejected records. You can also review aging records awaiting approval and review records that may require reapproval. One other thing that I'll point out about suite approvals is that it also has an email approval or rejection function. So you can approve or reject a record directly from an email. And I'm in the process of confirming this, but early on, The person approving it from email did not have to have a NetSuite full access license. I think that's still the case, but I'm 95% sure of it now. So that's actually a really cool feature of Suite Approvals, just as a side note. There's a question I'm going to answer real quick. Does the Suite Approvals bundle allow you to configure multiple approvers per department used on the transaction instead of the transaction creator supervisor? I want to say yes to that question, and this question is in a direct message to me instead of to the group, but that's fine. There is a department approver setup that you can do for Suite Approvals, and you can also set up multiple levels of approval. So you can have predefined approval levels, or you can use a supervisor and a department. There's a lot of features. I'm not sure how to answer that question directly, but I would suspect that you can do that. So anyway, let's move on. All right, so Coastal ACH. If you use Coastal ACH, you have probably received multiple emails at this point that Coastal ACH is being deprecated. Now, I want to say this because it's not that Coastal is not offering ACH functionality anymore. What's being deprecated is NetSuite, this partnership that NetSuite has with Coastal, where it's built into NetSuite. So it's just not going to be built in anymore. You can contact Coastal, and they have functionality to set it up so that you can still do ACH with Coastal directly out of NetSuite. So just preface that by making sure you know that. So Coastal ACH has a deprecation date of May 2022. Payments will no longer be transmitted to your vendors or processed from your customers, even if the process appears successful. So you do have to act on this. It will stop working. Depending upon your requirements, you may consider the following replacements. For accounts receivable payment acceptance, there's the payment link, which we talked about earlier. Payment link allows the recipient to pay each invoice individually. It is supported by both ACH and credit card payments. And then there's also this new feature called SweetCommerce My Account Overview. Full featured account view for your customers. Various payment methods are supported there. The My Account is, I think it came out, I think they announced it at SweetWorld last year. But it basically, if you have like SweetCommerce Advance, and there's an account, it's like a My Account page in SweetCommerce Advance, they've taken that functionality and made it so that you can have this My Account feature for your customers without having a SweetCommerce Advance website. So it's a very clean, very user-friendly interface for My Account. So there's going to be some features and functions around the ACH available there as well. And then for accounts payable, so sending payments out, outbound ACH payments, consider using the electronic bank payments Suite app. This is a free Suite app from NetSuite that you can install and configure. And basically what this does is it creates a payment file that you can specify different bank formats. You can even customize that format a little bit. But you create a payment file, and then you would need to take that file, and sometimes you go to your bank's portal and you can upload that file to your bank, and then it basically instructs them on what payments to send and to who. There is this other feature called SFTP Connector. It's a Suite app, and you can set this up to transmit files to your bank securely. So this is a new connector, and frankly, I didn't know about it until I started researching this Coastal ACH deprecation. I think it's been out for a little while now, but I think they're going to be talking about it a lot more, especially since they're getting rid of the Coastal ACH built into NetSuite. This is a free Suite app, and it basically allows you to take those files that you generate with the electronic bank payments process and send them to your bank through a secure FTP system. So again, this is for outgoing ACH payments. So it seems like NetSuite is they're trying to build a lot of this in to the system now for these ACH And then also obviously the payment link and the credit card payments and stuff like that too. So anyway, Coastal is going away, but I think there's definitely options. Next thing is electronic bank payments enhancements. So now you can exclude transactions from the electronic payments process. So this goes in hand with what we just talked about. You can exclude any invoice and credit memo from electronic payment processing by checking the exclude from electronic bank payments processing box. That's on the specific transaction. It's on the invoice, credit memo, and sales order records. Also, process payments for vendors from primary and secondary banks. So starting in 22.1, you can process payments using primary or secondary entity banks. A new entity bank list is added on the EFT subtab for the following transaction types: bills, bill credit, bill payment, commission, and expense reports. Another enhancement of electronic bank payments is the auto process payment file administration stuck in queue. So this is, if you use the electronic bank payments, this has been a problem in some instances where you get these payment files that are stuck in queue. And so what this does, well, I'll read this first. Electronic bank payments includes a new MapReduce script, auto process queued PFA, which lets you process PFA stuck in a payment queue. When the script runs, it sets the status of the stuck PFA to failed and automatically processes the next PFA in the queue. You can run the script deployment if you're comfortable doing that. You can do it on demand, or you can set a schedule for it to run daily. So it'll go through and look for any of these payment files that are stuck in the queue, and it'll mark them as failed and then reprocess them automatically. So I think that they're definitely putting in effort and energy into the payment systems, incoming and outgoing in NetSuite, and adding to that functionality. And this is kind of an indicator of that. SFTP connector enhancements. So again, this is that connector that I just talked about that I didn't know existed until not too long ago. So inbound configurations, you can create new inbound configuration records to connect NetSuite to the bank servers and initiate the payment file downloads. Configuration record. So you must have an administrator or SFTP setup role to configure the records. For information, go to the help topic, setting up inbound configuration records. To set up the inbound configuration, what the inbound configuration enables you to do is set up the bank server details to download the payment files in a secure manner from the inbound configurations page. Perform manual download of your bank payment files from bank to NetSuite server. So this is incoming. So you can pull the files in from your bank. You can also schedule an automatic download of your payment files based on your preferred date and time. What is not clear to me about this is if this is tied in with the bank matching bank data. I don't think it is. I think you would want to use the auto bank statement import Suite app instead. But this one will pull in basically manual payment files that your bank has produced. All right, next feature is bulk customer payments. Bulk customer payments, you can set up bulk payments by going to transactions, bulk customer payments, view bulk customer payments, and then new. On a bulk customer payments record, you can do the following: set the invoice search criteria, create a one-time bulk payments run, or set a recurring schedule for bulk payments, specify the payment processing profile that you want to use to process transactions in the bulk payments run, and set additional accounting options as well. You can set the default account and payment preferences, and also track process transactions. So this is a new feature to create bulk customer payments. All right, Suite Analytics data set linking. So at our Suite Analytics meeting in January, Ethan Haberman from iBailey talked about this, that this is a feature that's coming, and 22.1, they're saying that this is going to be available now. So you can now link two data sets in the workbook user interface. Linking data sets enables you to analyze metrics from two data sets in a single visualization based on the link that you define using at least one field in each data set. You can link data sets even if they are based on record types that do not have predefined common keys in the analytics data source, unlike when you join record types within a specific single data set. Additionally, with linked data sets, you can compare data that exists on two different levels of aggregation, like the sum of individual transactions versus a monthly budget. Ethan did, I believe, he talked about this at the meeting. I know he talked about it. I don't know if he demonstrated it. Because it would have had to be in a release preview, I think, at that point. But again, on our website, under the post page, you can go to the Suite Analytics meeting that we did in January, and it'll give more detail about this capability. So this is more of a public service announcement. It is in the new release notes, but I thought I would drop it in here. So the file drag and drop enhancement in version 2.03.0, the file drag and drop Suite app is updated to make it compatible with 22.1. After installing this version, you must clear the browser cache or press Control F5 for the Suite app to work properly. So if your file drag and drop is updated and it stops working, you have to clear your browser cache or just hit Control F5 and that will refresh the cache on your specific web page. So again, that's just a public service announcement for the file drag and drop enhancement. And then the last thing that I have is a bonus tip, which I think is pretty cool. If you go to status.netsuite.com at this point, there is this new subscribe to updates button. So when you subscribe to updates, you can subscribe to, basically you'll get emails from NetSuite or Oracle NetSuite when they have notifications about specific data centers, if there's problems identified, when those problems are resolved, lots of different things. I think you can also do a text message. And I signed up for the text messages thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. And then I would get like 20 text messages in one day when there's like all of these data centers that have problems. So I decided to switch it to just the email updates. And you can also, I believe, subscribe to specific data centers. So you don't, if we're in the US and you don't care about the data centers in Australia, for example, you can not subscribe to those ones. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. And one other thing that I noticed, I don't have a slide on it, but within the last week or two, they've updated Suite Answers. And so in Suite Answers production, it's a brand new layout. It looks really nice, and it is very, very, I think, a lot more user-friendly than it was before. So one question, what is the bundle ID for the SFTP connector? I don't know the bundle ID, but I believe, David, you can go to Suite Apps, the Suite Apps tab in your NetSuite instance and search for SFTP connector. And I think you install it that way instead of installing it through a bundle. All right. That is all that I have for the NetSuite updates. Thank you all for your time and hope you found that valuable. At this point, we'll go ahead and turn it over to our open forum. So if you have any questions, problems, anything at all that you want to ask the group, you can do that now. And I'm going to stop sharing and also stop recording now.